Chapter 237, Reconstructing the Body on the Water Mirror was an unfamiliar face. What the? Zhuemo jumped in fright, and then rubbed his face in curiosity before turning and inspecting in the mirror. After a long look, he made a final conclusion, all right, much better than before. His heart felt slightly reassured. A rock in his heart landed. This face was not handsome, but at least, his nose was a nose, his mouth was a mouth. Truthfully, this face was slightly average, almost immature. Bald head, thick brows, and thick lips. His body was also thicker than before. He looked like a nice and obedient child. Was this what he had really looked like originally? He was puzzled, and then saw a puzzled expression on the face in the water mirror. He felt slightly unnatural. He had become accustomed in the past years to that zombie face that could never have an expression, and used to hiding his thoughts under that zombie face. Now, his expressions had become more varied. The emotions inside naturally could be expressed on his face. He felt it was extremely strange. With curiosity and novelty, he stared at the unfamiliar yet vivid face in the water mirror. He decided to ask Pu Yao if this was his original appearance. This question was extremely important to him. Gong Sun Cha looked at Zhuemo's hand, and when he saw the several-dimensional rings, he released a breath. It really was Xixiang. Seeing Xixiang's appearance, he also knew that something had happened. At this time, Xixiang needed quiet. He made a silent gesture, and took everyone else to retreat out. Changing appearances was not a rare matter for Xiuzhe. Once everyone left, Zhuemo entered the sea of consciousness and found Pu Yao. What happened? How come I look like this? Pu Yao glanced at him, and sneered, don't pretend in front of him. I had not expected the two of you to team up and scheme against me. Team up? Scheme? Zhuemo was confused. I do admire you. You really have guts. Reconstructing the body, even those great Mo may not dare to try. You really have the guts. I had underestimated you before. Reconstruct the body. Zhuemo's confusion grew. I had found it strange before why you would so easily agree to the drawing of earth energy so easily. Pu Yao narrowed his bloody pupil, speaking to himself, I should have thought of this earlier. How could you not know that my injuries needed earth energy? You were waiting for me here a long time ago. You are as cunning as you always were. Zhuemo was able to hear that Pu Yao's last two sentences evidently were not directed at him. He was not dumb. Listening to Pu Yao's words, he got a general understanding. Pu Yao's, you, should be the gravestone. The more he listened, the colder his heart became. He suddenly recalled the, do as he asks. He had a feeling that Pu Yao's speculation was not unbased. Neither the Yao or the Steel were good people. But when he thought deeper, he quickly realized it. If it was not for this Yao and Steel, he would not have reached the level he was at now. He probably would not having even successfully entered Juji. It was like doing business. Each side had their own aims. Even the smallest of benefits would not drop down from the sky. As to risk, what business had no risk? I get the general gist of reconstructing the body, Zhuemo directly asked, is this my original appearance? His words not having the effect he intended, shock flashed across Pu Yao's mind. Didn't this guy hate being used the most? However, he did not linger on this question. It would cause the opposite effect if he said too much. Of course not, Pu Yao's answer was very definite. After reconstruction of the body, all of your appearance would change. The greatest cause of danger in this kind of MO skill is here. All the bone, blood and flesh of your body would be broken up, processed and then reformed, making up for your natural deficiencies, making a powerful body. Zhuemo pointed at his face and said, in other words, this face now has no tincture of a connection with my previous one. Exactly. Pu Yao was slightly cheerful at the misfortune. Not just not having a connection at all, your entire body has been broken, all the remaining traces have completely been destroyed. In other words, the clues from before are gone now. Suemo stilled. You had 3 clues in your hands. Changing features and erasing the mind would leave behind 2 clues, one was on your face, the other is on your spirit. There is one more, the 5-element glass bead in your body. Oh, you only have 2 clues now. Suomo's expression was very strange, completely different than what Pu Yao had expected. He couldn't help but ask, are you not unhappy that you have 1 less clue? I'm alright. Suomo's tone was slightly complicated. He shrugged his shoulders. At least, I'm alive. This business is not unprofitable since I kept my little life. Pu Yao was speechless. What are the benefits of this body? Suemo quickly came out of his emotions and asked with anticipation. Having heard the scarce words of Pu Yao, it seemed the new body was very powerful. Pu Yao's expression froze. He could not suppress it any longer, furiously shouting, I didn't do this, it's none of my business, before turning and leaving. Suemo stilled, and then roared with laughter. He felt good about getting one over Pu Yao, the lingering depression in his heart sweeping away. Leaving the sea of consciousness in a good mood, he suddenly thought of Zhong Ru. He remembered that Zhong Ru had fended off the last attack for him. If not for that shield, he would have been heavily injured. He hurriedly found Gongsun Shidi, and asked about Zhong Ru's injuries and then rushed over. Zhong Ru sat with his legs crossed, his face white as paper, his presence extremely low. Lei Peng and Nian Lu were worriedly sitting beside him. Seeing Suemo come, the 2 of them hurriedly stood up. How are the injuries? Suemo abruptly asked. Nian Lu grimaced, his channels were injured. It would take a period of time to recover. To heal channels, this is 3rd grade Spring Dew Dan, specifically for channel injuries. Oh, 3rd grade Primary Energy Dan, not bad for recovering energies. 3rd grade Primary Replenishing Dan, restoring the body. Nian Lu and Lei Ping gaped at the pile of Ling Dan. After seeing Zhong Ru, Suemo remembered the rainbow mark butterfly that he had forgotten in the mountain valley. He called for the rainbow mark butterfly through the beast service card, but to his disappointment, the rainbow mark butterfly did not reply. If the energy of the rainbow mark butterfly was not still present, he would have assumed that the rainbow mark butterfly had died of poison. Since the rainbow mark butterfly was still alive, he felt slightly reassured. Without the use of rainbow pupil, the black poisonous mist inside the mountain valley was enough to take his little life. He instantly discarded the thought of going to inspect the mountain valley. He burrowed back into his room, and started to investigate his new body. There was a question that puzzled Gongsun Cha. The 5th grade Ling beast was in the hands of the 2 Ningmai. It had to be said that 5th grade Ling beasts were able to enter the ranks of high-level Ling beasts. They were not something that Ningmai could command. How could it not be a puzzle how one appeared in the hands of 2 Ningmai? He was extremely attentive, and called Nian Lu and Lei Peng over to ask for the details. It's the Kong brothers. Luckily, he had Xia Shan who was familiar with Venerable Qi's base. He explained. The Kong brothers had managed to discover a secret technique from somewhere. If the 3 work together, they can summon a 5th grade bloody horned serpent. They were the strongest helpers of Venerable Qi supposedly. The secret technique they found was not complete. The 5th grade Ling beast they summon is not truly 5th grade, and can only be considered a quasi-5th grade beast. The reason that the bloody horned serpent escaped control might be related to us having killed Big Kong. Even Xia Shan would never have thought that his speculations perfectly matched what had actually happened. Gongsun Cha felt that it was plausible. To say of nothing else, the power of a 5th grade Ling beast definitely was higher than 3 Ningmai Shouja. If this secret technique did not have any flaw, no one would have survived. Suddenly, someone hurriedly ran in. Head. The subordinates usually called Gongsun Cha head, and Suemo boss. What is it? Gongsun Cha asked. He wandered inside, did something else happen? A female Xiao was floating in the river, the brothers pulled her out. Female Xiao. Gongsun Cha stilled. It took a long time for him to react. After leaving Wukong Mountain, he had not encountered female Xiao again. In cultivation, there was no difference between female and male. Many sects even took only female disciples. The only type of cultivation that had a difference was probably the Dhyana Xiao, which cultivated their bodies. Females loved beauty, liked their skin snowy white, and had no interest in bronzed skin and hard bones. Supposedly, Little Mountain Jie had female-only factions. "Let's go see," Gongsun Cha did not hesitate in saying. When Gongsun Cha hurried to the camp, he quickly saw this female Xiao. More accurately, it was a wounded female Xiao. "I say, she is just a bit too ugly." Gongsun Cha did not realize how malicious his words were as he said in shock. "Really?" Xia Shan agreed empathetically, nodding his head. The unconscious female Xiao was seriously injured, the hair flowing free, her entire body giving off a nasty smell. Her face was full of crusted scabies. She was dressed in a torn and white robe, not much different from a beggar. Her feet were bare, her legs patched in bruises. Suemo had hurried over when he heard the news. His expression was serious due to Pu Yao's words. "She's been infected with Yao poison." Yao poison. Suomo's expression became slightly ugly. "You mean that she was wounded by the Yao?" "Exactly." Pu Yao, who had felt that his status had become threatened lately, did not hold anything back anymore, not forgetting to show off at any time. "This is a very common Yao poison, made from green thorn vine. They used this thousands of years ago. I hadn't thought they would still use it." At the end, he did not forget to review like he usually did. Did they live 1,000 years more for nothing? Suemo did not pay attention to Pu Yao. He suddenly raised his head. Where did she float from? Xia Shan stilled and then ran to ask the Xiuzha who had discovered the female first. After a while, he pointed at a direction on the river. "Floated from there." Gongsun Cha also reacted at this time. The two of them exchanged a look. Sky Moon Jie. That direction, it was the direction of Sky Moon Jie. This female Xiao had escaped from Sky Moon Jie. The two of them were extremely shocked. Their present position was not far from the Jie River. However, this female Xiao was the first person that they had found who had escaped from Sky Moon Jie. Without a doubt, the Yao army had locked down the Jie River. It was not hard to accomplish. They only needed to send a troop to occupy Desolate Wood Reef, and then they could secure the Jie River. This female Xiao was very strong. Suemo and Gongsun Cha exchanged another look with the same idea, getting the other on their side. To say of nothing else, this female Xiao's power was not of a normal Ningmai to be able to break through the blockade. Even more, all of them came from Sky Moon Jie, this made the two people feel slightly closer to her. Having made a decision, Suemo asked Pu Yao, "How do you neutralize the poison?" Chapter 238, Sonic Lightning Walnut, How is it? Gongsun Cha looked into the room, and then sat next to Suemo. Suemo shook his head. "I don't know. She has been seriously wounded before, not just this once. It is a miracle that she is alive right now." He had some admiration for her. When he had inspected the female, he had been stunned by the dense layers of hidden wounds inside her body. Was this woman like Wei Xingxiang, and also a battle maniac? It would be better if she looked prettier. Gongsun Cha smacked his lips. Suemo was slightly surprised. "Do you want to find a female Xiao?" "No, that's not it," Gongsun Cha explained, his face serious. "To be easy on the eyes. Tell me, what's so good about women? Why does everyone like them?" Suemo recalled the paper crane female's illusory formation that made blood rise. "Xixiang, you don't know this?" Gongsun Cha looked in disbelief at Swa Mo. Gongsun Cha covered his forehead and sighed. He then adjusted his attitude to that of an experienced person, and began to lecture Swa Mo in a heavy voice. Xixiang, I may not be as good as you in cultivation. But if we are talking about the understanding of women, this little brother has a little bit of skill. Swa Mo's mind became alert. He hurriedly said, Tell me. Women, the most important part is beauty, beauty like jade, voice like the wind, with a tantalizing fragrance that one cannot pull themselves away. Gongsun Cha's face was intoxicated, but he quickly said in a heavy voice, But, Xixiang, you have to remember, you should just look at women. My master said that you can only look at women, but cannot touch them. We shall just look at them. Oh, so it's like that, Swa Mo nodded, still confused. It really is wonderful to meet someone from Sky Moon Jia. Gongsun Cha sighed, there is only the three of us. It's better to have one more person. Swa Mo was silent as he thought of previous matters. After a while, he asked, Where's Ching Shidi? Where else could he be? He's always at the beast pool. Soon, he will accomplish his goal and cultivate into a ling beast. He, Gongsun Cha mocked. It's good as long as he likes it. It might have been the string of occurrences recently, but Swa Mo had a much more open perspective on many matters. Gongsun Cha nodded. It would not be outrageous to say that their situation was a precarious one. They might have won a few victories, but these 100-something people could not rank up there in the entire little mountain Jia. What they were doing right now, was it not what they liked? The deepest impression he had after learning how to command was that he had wasted his days before. He suddenly thought of an urgent matter. Xixiang, where do you think this Yao army came from? Swa Mo was stilled, struck silent by Gongsun Cha's question. He thought and said, probably Sky Water Jia, Little Mountain Jia only has 2 Jia rivers, they could only have come from Sky Water Jia. Gongsun Cha's handsome face was full of worry. But if they came from Sky Water Jia, would the Yao army have let go of Clear Sky sect? When we were at Desolate Wood Reef, they didn't even say a thing before attacking. That was right. If the Yao army really came into Little Mountain Jia from Sky Water Jia, any power that would have been guarding the Jia River would have been destroyed. Swa Mo didn't believe that the Yao army would make an exception for Clear Sky sect. Maybe Clear Sky sect had captured the Jia River entrance after the Yao army passed. Swa Mo thought of a possibility. I had asked Xia Shan and the others, but the Clear Sky sect has always guarded that place, Gongsun Cha said. Swa Mo felt a wave of cold seep up from the bottom of his feet. Is there another entrance to Little Mountain Jia? I don't know. Gongsun Cha shook his head. This question was extremely important. Swa Mo immediately went to find Pu Yao. Pu Yao said in a deep voice, the Yao army should have entered from a chaos rift. Chaos rift? What is that? Each Jia would have several entrances. The most frequently seen are the Jia rivers. But other than those passageways, there usually would be some very small rifts, these are chaos rifts. However, most Jia masters, after they have taken control of the Jia, would find these chaos rifts and seal them to prevent others from taking advantage of them. Pu Yao was very familiar with this kind of knowledge. Are there many chaos rifts? Swa Mo's expression was slightly ugly. If it really was a chaos rift, then that meant the Yao army could appear at any time. I don't know, Pu Yao said, each Jia is different. However, there is one point. The reason that chaos rifts have the appellation of chaos is that the laws inside the rifts are chaotic and non-existent. The higher the level of cultivator, the greater the effect it has on them. Little Mountain Jia is one of the smallest kinds of Jia. If it really has a chaos rift, it probably could only allow Ningmai Xiuzhe to pass through. Yaoma will be similarity constrained. Hearing this, Swa Mo was completely certain the Yao army had entered Little Mountain Jia from a chaos rift. He had found it strange before that the Yao army's average cultivation had not been high despite the organization it showed. The individual strength had been comparable to Ningmai. So it was not that they did not want to send experts, but they could not send them. How do you find a chaos rift? Can we block it off? Suemo asked with fear in his voice. A danger that was known but could not be seen was the easiest ones to cause terror. The surroundings of a chaos rift will usually have some attributes. Due to chaos which is not divided into yin and yang, not into the 5 elements. There would not be any earth energy, nor ling power. Xiao, Yao, and Mo will all be suppressed under chaos. Oh, it would also be empty and barren. No beast can survive in the area around a chaos rift, there will be no plants or animals, nothing living, Pu Yao streamed on. At the end, he added, there are also some secret methods that can detect them, but I don't know them. Suemo left the sea of consciousness. He narrated what Pu Yao had said. Gongsun Cha was very calm. This answer was not far from his own speculations. He only asked a question, is the area around the chaos rift suitable for ambush? Theoretically, it is very suitable. Pu Yao responded of his own initiative. However, he could only speak to Suemo, but tell him to end the thought. Even the most exhausted lion is not one sheep can defeat. What he commands are the sheep of the sheep. Suemo was speechless. However, he still tactfully passed on Pu Yao's words. Gongsun Cha's expression was slightly ugly, but he also knew this was the truth. He was very clear about what the people under his command were like. Even though they had formed the beginnings of an army under his training, but it was far from being able to compete with a fully mature army like the Yao army. Suemo also had no solutions for this problem. However, this also increased the determination of the 2 people to quickly defeat Clear Sky Sect's blockade. That was the only ray of hope for survival. Is there any news of Yin Fiend grounds? Suemo asked. The power of the Yin fire bead was greater than he had imagined. Such a big monster as the bloody horned serpent had been turned to dust upon impact. It really was out of Suemo's expectations, and increased his desire to find Yin Fiend lands. The strength of 5th grade Ling beasts were on the same level as Jindan. Even though the bloody horned serpent was only semi-5th level, but a power that could kill it would have some effect on a Jindan. Gongsun Cha was also clear about the power of the Yin fire bead, and had been extremely attentive to this matter. He said, nothing yet, but I will focus on it. Right, after getting rid of Venerable Chi's bunch, we got something good. What's something good? Suemo's mind became alert as he asked. A maturing 4th grade sonic lightning walnut tree. The fruit is almost mature. Venerable Chi had been guarding it all this time, but it landed in our hands, Gongsun Cha smiled shyly. Sonic lightning walnut. 4th grade. Suemo's eyes widened as he gasped. Seeing Xixiang drooling, Gongsun Cha giggled, yes. Xixiang's expression was so vivid now. Gongsun Cha wanted to laugh. Suemo rushed into Venerable Chi's mountain cave. The place was heavily guarded at the moment. Gongsun Cha was also clear about the value of a 4th grade sonic lightning walnut. It was a treasure beyond any price. A stalk of a nondescript walnut tree twice the height of a person. The crown was filled with green fruits, the skin of which was covered in silver dots. There was no thick Ling energy, no blinding light. This tree looked extremely normal. It was hard for people to relate this tree to a 4th grade sonic lightning walnut tree. This Venerable Chi has some good eyesight. Normal people won't have recognized it. Suemo greedily stared at the sparkling green fruits on the tree. Now, it is all ours. Gongsun Cha did not have a good understanding of the value of the sonic lightning walnut. He only knew that this tree was somewhat rare and very expensive. Xixiang always was bursting with interest towards anything that was rare and could be sold for a good price. He himself was also very happy. He knew better than anyone else the expenses that was spent on the training he had ordered. He felt it was a good beginning that he could create revenue for Xixiang. Having had a sweet taste, Gongsun Cha wondered if it was time to speed up the steps to create revenue. Pia, a mature fruit fell off the branch. Suemo hurriedly put out a hand, the fruit flying into his grasp. He gently brushed with his hand and the skin and flesh was taken off, revealing the silvery sparkling walnut on the inside. This was the famed sonic lightning walnut. Suomo's eyes was intoxicated as he pulled the sonic lightning walnut in front of him. This sonic lightning walnut was slightly smaller than a normal walnut, appearing to have been made of pure silver. It was extremely heavy, the abundant creasing on the surface released the occasional spark of lightning. Suomo's hand was covered in a thin layer of Ling power. Otherwise, he would be injured by the lightning of the sonic lightning walnut. So this is the sonic lightning walnut? It's pretty beautiful. Gongsun Cha crowded over. This can probably sell for a good price. Sell? In a reversal of his usual attitude, Suemo furiously shook his head. We aren't going to sell even one. This is something that you can't even buy if you had the Jingxia. His consciousness scanned the sparkling silvery sonic lightning walnut in his hand as he sighed inside. The sonic lightning walnut naturally contained abundant amounts of hard lightning. It was a natural talisman that could be used immediately. At present, Suemo was lacking high attack power moves. These sonic lightning walnuts had come at the perfect time. With his thrifty and prudent personality, he naturally was not so stupid as to use the sonic lightning walnuts directly. He also quickly discovered that, while the sonic lightning walnut contained abundant hard lightning, but the kernel inside the hard husk could contain even more hard lightning. If hard lightning was used to continuously temper it, the power of the sonic lightning walnut would continuously increase. For other people, it would not be easy to find hard lightning, but it was as simple for Suemo as raising his hand. Young Fiend Hard Lightning, a 4th grade hard lightning, was perfect for tempering the sonic lightning walnuts. Suemo looked at the branches drooping with green fruits, and the strong feeling of happiness made him dizzy. Mine! All mine! The cave echoed with the balderdash of a miser. Chapter 239, Yao visiting Wukong. Compared to the past Wukong mountain, if one went there now, weeds grew all over the mountain, the Ling fields were barren. Occasionally, little wild animals poked their heads out from the weeds. It is in this area. Listening to the report from her subordinate, Mu Shi stepped on the overgrown path as she walked up the mountain. Which sect used to possess this site? She asked. It is a sword-practicing sect called Wukong Sword Sect. The middle-aged man had clearly done large amounts of work, introducing in great detail. Wukong Sword Sect is one of the most accomplished sects of Sky Moon Jia. They became extremely famous in the last 2 years. At the beginning, they had 4 Jindan of unordinary power. Oh, such a little place, it is really abnormal to have 4 Jindan, Mu Shi said in surprise. Yan Feng sneered unconcernedly. Mu Shi ignored him, and said to the middle-aged man, continue. These 2 years, they have expanded extremely quickly. Presently, they have almost 10 Jindan in the sect. Surprise flashed through Mu Shi's eyes. Almost 10 Jindan. This time, surprise was also on Yan Feng's face. They were only the forward guard. Almost 10 Jindan would be enough to be of threat to them. He was arrogant, but having successfully came out of a Yao art house, he naturally was not stupid. Other than this, their second-generation disciples are extremely outstanding, dominating Sky Moon Jia. The eldest disciple Wei Xing entered Ningmai at 20, and his talent at the sword is even more astounding. Having already reached the step of sword essence manifestation. Second disciple Suemo is extremely skilled in formations. Third disciple Luoli has also reached Ningmai, and created his own sword scripture, self-separation. A very strong sect. Mu Shi's expression changed. In the past years, the Yao had increased their understanding of the Xiuzhe. It would not be surprising for this information contained in the report to be referring to an intermediate-sized sect. But it really was astounding for it to be reported from a little sect in such a little and backwater Jie. Yan Feng also had a shocked expression. He had always been proud of his genius. He had been dealt a great blow by the news that someone had reached Ningmai when they were 20 years old, and had reached the level of sword essence manifestation. They walked to a lonely little wooden house. This little wooden house was extremely eye-catching. As they had walked up, weeds had covered everything. But the empty ground around this little wooden house was bare and had no weeds. Such an eye-catching and strange place naturally could not escape their eyes. Mu Shi stared at the little wooden house for a while, standing motionlessly at her spot. The other people saw that Mu Shi did not move, and did not dare to more either. Seeing the situation, Yan Feng snorted coldly, and did not hesitate to walk towards the wooden house. The middle-aged man couldn't help but look at Mu Shi with a questioning expression. Mu Shi waved her hand with a faint smile. When Yan Feng's right foot stepped onto the empty ground, his head rang, all the hairs on his body standing up on end. The scene in front of him suddenly changed. That normal-looking wooden house suddenly broke, everything in the surrounding space seemed to collapse, an invisible force seemed to pull him downwards, countless sharp and intimidating sword essences pushing at him from all directions. He paled, then his eyes turned bright red, flames erupting all over his body. He gathered all the energy in his body, and pulled his body out to retreat. As he left the empty ground, the frightening scene disappeared. The invisible force, the sword essences, they were like illusions. Yan Feng swallowed in terror, not daring to put away the flames on his body as he looked with fear at the lonely little wooden house. This is the site of cultivation for a very powerful sword show. Mu Shi slowly walked beside him, and opened, every bit of the ground here has been permeated with sword essence for a long time. It is vicious and sharp, nothing can grow here. Each step that you take forward, the sword essence grows stronger. At the end, there is only two endings. One is that you are torn to pieces by the sword essences, the other is all the sword essences have been destroyed by you. Yan Feng's complexion was pale. Since they had entered Little Mountain Jia from the Chaos Rift, it had been smooth sailing, and he had not encountered any proper resistance, causing him to have a low opinion of Xiuzhe, assuming that the Xiuzhe were just so. Only now did he suddenly realize, to his shock, that the strong masters of the Xiuzhe were so terrifying. Yan Feng's unusual silence greatly satisfied Mu Shi. She did not do this just because of Yan Feng. She had discovered a mood of underestimating the enemy invading the ranks earlier. This was fatal to a vanguard that had entered the deep of the enemy. Her subordinates looked with shock at the barren ground and the wooden house. She turned, and saw the pride in her subordinates' eyes had faded greatly before she asked the middle-aged man expressionlessly, "Are there any potential targets?" The middle-aged man said respectfully, "From the time of the stars in daytime, the time that Darren had came to Wukong's sword sect should have been before Wukong's sword sect's expansion. Before their expansion, there were not many people in Wukong's sword sect. Since Darren had caused the stars in daytime, this Darren probably was seriously wounded. With that, it is unlikely that Darren had taken over a Jindan's body. What is more likely are the second-generation disciples." Mu Shi did not interrupt. After he finished, she thought and then asked, "Who do you feel is most suspicious?" "Wei Sheng." The middle-aged man did not hesitate. "Why?" "Wei Sheng is the most talented, and can give Darren the greatest aid." Mu Shi shook her head. "I do not think so. If you are wounded and have to hide in someone's body, what would you consider?" Hearing this, the middle-aged man became silent for a moment before saying, "In this subordinate's view, the first is safety, the second is to speedily recover." "You are not wrong," Mu Shi said, then continued, "Wei Sheng's talent is the greatest, and the primary target of the sect's attention. It is easy to slip up if one is not careful. Therefore, residing in his body is not a wise choice. If it was me, I would choose Mo or Luo Li. They are not as attention-catching as Wei Xing, yet they also received good support. It is also certain that the attention they receive is less than Wei Xing. No matter if the goal is either to control or to tempt, it is much easier. The middle-aged man was full of admiration. Darren is wise. Where is Wukong's sword sect now? Supposedly, they have already moved to Bright Wave Jia, the middle-aged man answered. He had an expression of difficulty while he spoke. With our strength, it is unlikely that we can take down Bright Wave Jia. Mu Shi was not angry, smiling and saying, Bright Wave Jia is an intermediate Jia. Of course, we cannot conquer it. Our mission has almost been completed. Take the information you have gathered, and our speculations to make a report. Just send it back. There will be people who will naturally take care of the rest. Yes. The middle-aged person said respectfully. Yan Feng's expression had recovered. When he heard Mu Shi's words, he was still somewhat discontent. Then what are we doing here? Us? Mu Shi smiled. After working for so long, it's time for a vacation. Yan Feng was speechless. Zhuo Mo's body was filled with strength. This new body gave him too many unfamiliar surprises and feelings. It progressed extremely rapidly in body cultivation. Without too much effort, he had entered the stage of 3 mountains. As he moved, he felt his entire body was filled by a bountiful power. It was an extremely pleasurable feeling. What surprised him the most was the Mo matrix Pu Yao had carved into his body had completely disappeared when his body had been reconstructed this time. However, for some unknown reason, there were some new formation-like patterns on his body. These patterns were not as complex or as strange as the Mo matrix appeared, but was filled with a kind of man-made formation beauty. However, Zhuo Mo was still uncertain as to whether these patterns were formations. They required time to study. Other than his body cultivation that reached 3 mountains, the other breakthrough was his abhina, which had not formed for a long time. His abhina was related to his eyes. This had not changed when he had changed into a new body. Ling Eye. The only ability of Ling Eye was to detect the flow of Ling energy. He was not able to use Ling Eye for a very long time at the moment, because his eyes would become extremely dry and sore. But even so, Ling Eye was a great surprise to him. Maybe other people would not care about Ling Eye, but for him, Ling Eye was perfect. It was a great boon to him to be able to see the flow of Ling energy when he studied formations. There were many explanations for the abhina. Diana Xiu thought that it was wisdom from Samadhi, the abhina was wisdom. Pu Yao scorned this explanation. He thought it was the awakening of the base source of power of the flesh. But there was a point that both sides were in a strange consensus on, an abhina would grow. However, no matter if it was Zhong Ru or Pu Yao, they did not know how to cultivate an abhina. Zhuo Mo was not in a rush. He still had the simplest and stupidest method, learning through familiarity. When he had the time, he would use the Ling Eye, and only stop when it was too sore to bear. The reconstruction of his body had given him improvement in all areas. Other than body cultivation and the abhina, the improvement in all other areas were extraordinary. The new Ling channels were even stronger, and grown wider by half of what they were before. The bones were like jade, strong as steel. The muscles were like metal, hardness concealed within the flexibility. Every time he inspected his new body, Zhuo Mo could not help but sigh. Strangely, he felt awe towards the gravestone. Such an astonishing method, it could be called uncanny craftsmanship, like stealing the sky and changing the sun. He could not think of what kind of person could have such ability. This ability completely destroyed all he knew. However, he put this awe deep into his heart. He cultivated without rest or food. Right now, he had such good conditions. If he wasted it, it would be so unprofitable. The talent that this new body had was something he could not imagine before. Just as Wang was furiously cultivating, Gong Sun Cha took the group of Xianxia and started a similarly furious expansion. In 3 months, Gong Sun Cha took the group of Xianxia and went through 4 hard battles. In the hardest battle, even Ma Fan and Xia Shan were wounded. Even Gong Sun Cha was almost killed. But this battle had completely awoken the madness under Gong Sun Cha's shy and delicate appearance. Just as everyone's wounds had healed, he took 15 battle units, chased for 800 li, conquered a faction, and captured 80 Xianxia. After 4 fierce battles, the number of Xianxia on Gong Sun Cha's hands quickly grew to an unprecedented 450 people. With one step, they became the biggest power within 3,000 li. Mrs. Infamy quickly spread. The strong offensive power displayed by this faction of mysterious origins made people look. After a string of dazzling fights, everyone understood this troop was not a friendly one. In an area 3,000 li in diameter, all the scattered Xianxia had been swept away by Gong Sun Cha, and he did not leave behind one. In other words, in this enormous area, other than Gong Sun Cha and the others, there was no one in any other place. However, after a succession of victories, Gong Sun Cha's mood was extremely terrible because he heard a piece of news. Chapter 240, What was going on? Gong Sun Cha found Zui Mo and faithfully told him the news he had received. The further he listened, the uglier Zui Mo's expression became. This Clear Sky sect is truly too evil. They want to use all of Little Mountain Jia to feed only them. Zui Mo was extremely furious, but he quickly calmed down. We need to move faster. The longer it takes, the harder the days will get. When this outer hall of theirs truly stabilizes, they would have many fighters. If we want to charge out, it would be much harder. Gong Sun Cha nodded his head heavily, a flash of anger in his eyes. Clear Sky Sect's actions was equal to farming the Xianxia of Little Mountain Jia as though they were ling beasts. When it was time, they would be no different than those Xiao slaves. I have a solution, Zui Mo said after some thought. What solution? Gong Sun Cha asked hurriedly. They sell ling grains, we'll sell black processing meditation mats. Gong Sun Cha was slightly puzzled and spoke, wouldn't it be too much of a waste if we sell the black processing meditation mats to them? At that time, the price of Jingshi in Little Mountain Jia would inflate dramatically. Sell. Zui Mo said hatefully, we won't just sell, we'll sell in large quantities. As long as the black processing meditation mats are sold, the noose on everyone's necks would not be so tight. If Clear Sky Sect cannot finish establishing the status quo, all of their past effort would be for nothing. When Clear Sky Sect discovers that it is us who ruined their business, they would definitely come to our doors. Wait at leisure while the enemy labors, this way, we can set a trap for them. A strong dragon does not suppress the local snakehead. On our territory, it isn't up to them how things are done. Gong Sun Cha's eyes instantly lit up. The two of them discussed for a long time inside the room, dark snickers occasionally passing out of the room. Lei Peng, Xia Shan, and the others found to their surprise that Head's mood today was very good, the shadow on his face seemed to have been swept away. Usually, when Lil Miss mood was good, everyone had easier days. However, before they had time to be happy, they heard Lil Miss announce that, from today onward, training was multiplied. Wails rang out into the landscape. Fortunately, the Xianxia who made it through the cruel battles were not resistant to harsh cultivation. Truthfully, what everyone wanted the most was access to that sword formation. Every Xianxia that came out of the formation would go into seclusion. Up until now, several had comprehended sword essence after entering the sword formation. Something this good that went against the common knowledge was naturally very tempting to many. However, there were too many monks yet not enough porridge. The sword formation only allowed for one person to cultivate at a time. Gong Sun Cha had a headache over the matter and could only use it as a part of the rewards for service. Seeing the busy camp, Gong Sun Cha sighed. If there was more time, he would definitely have made a true elite force. It was a pity what they lacked the most was time. When they charged out of Little Mountain Jie, he would find Xixiao, and make a true troop. Having tasted what it was like to be a battle general, it would be really bland if he had to do something else. However, what was going to happen next really filled him with anticipation. After giving many matters to Gong Sun Shidi, the amount of matters Suemo had to attend to made his scalp prickle. The crux of this plan was black processing meditation mats, and large amounts of them. It was not difficult to make black processing meditation mats, but the volume was too large. In the recent while, Suemo had used up all the spare time he had outside out of cultivation to make black processing meditation mats. The amount needed now was much higher, and he did not have an assistant. He needed to complete all of the work by himself. This clearly was not realistic. He decided to pick some Xiozha who had the basics of forging from the camp to help him. What surprised him was that there were more than 50 people of the 450 who knew the fundamentals of forging. Suemo only understood after he asked. These Xiozha mostly had no sect, and after they entered Ningmai, they naturally had good days. However, before they entered Ningmai, they were no different than any other low-level Xiozha. Basically, everyone had a skill. Ling farming, animal husbandry, forging, etc. Suemo and Gong Sun Cha gaped at the variety. However, even though most of them had learned the basics and had spent longer on forging than Suemo had, but due to the lack of a systematic education, they had only done some very basic jobs. After Ningmai, they had not done much. There were two who were exceptions. One of them was called Ji Wei, the other Sun Bao. The two had made a living from forging before the change in Little Mountain Jie. Their skill in forging was much higher than Suemo. Suemo treasured the two of them when he found them. He even managed to take out the golden crow fire and allowed the two of them to absorb it. It was like the two of them had been hit with Jingshi from the sky, they were so happy they almost fainted. Golden crow fire. This was golden crow fire. The two had schemed and made countless efforts, but had never found a fire seed that could satisfy them. So when Suemo threw each of them a mini box and told them that a thread of golden crow fire was sealed inside, their hands shook so much they almost dropped the boxes. Other than happiness, the two deeply felt the importance boss placed on them. It was not a joke. This was golden crow fire. 4th grade fire seed. The fire seed that any person in forging or dan-making dreamed about. Yet before the two of them were able to feel smug, they saw Suemo pick out 10 more people with the highest skill in forging, and give each of them a mini-box. Ji Wei and Sun Bao were dumbstruck, their expressions as though they had seen a ghost. It was not just them. When the 10 people had been picked out, they had been looking with admiration at the two. Now, they were holding the mini-box, a stunned expression on their faces, their minds completely blank. The remaining Xiozha were also completely stunned. The temperature of the room rose dramatically. Work hard. Suemo waved his hand like a show-off. Taking in everyone's gazes, it was like he had eaten ginseng fruit, his entire body unspeakably comfortable. There was no way around it, GE just has a lot of golden crow fire. This group of Xiozha that had been dissatisfied at having been transferred over to a new troop started to furiously work as though they had been shot with chicken blood. Their enthusiasm with work made Suemo jump in fright. They wouldn't die from working this hard, right? Suemo taught the formations of the black processing meditation mat to Ji Wei and Sun Bao. When Suemo finished teaching them, the two were motionless as though they were two pieces of rock. From then on, the two had truly been convinced. Suemo concentrated solely on his work. When he raised his head in rest, he noticed that a person was standing in the doorway. He gave a surprised expression, and stopped what he was doing. "You woke up?" asked Suemo. The other person was just standing there. He didn't know how long it had gone on. This female Xiao stood there woodenly as though she had not heard him speak. Had she become stupid due to her injuries? Suemo muttered inside. What are you called? He probed. The female Xiao did not respond. Did your injuries really turn you stupid? Suemo rubbed his chin as he thought. He decided to try one more time. Are you hungry? The female Xiao still did not react. Seeing the female Xiao's face that was full of scabies, Suemo was suddenly filled with empathy. He remembered his past zombie face. When she had been unconscious, Suemo had checked. Her face did not have any disguise. The scabies on her face were caused by a certain kind of poison inside her body. Adding on the new and old inner wounds that could not be counted, Suemo felt it was a miracle she was still alive. After the last try had failed, Suemo had a bit of headache and could only give up. Do whatever you want. He didn't feel the other understood, but right now, he had too many things to do. Even though the creation of the black processing meditation mat had been basically given to other people, but he still had other work. Any complete plan was constructed of many conditions. He decided to do his own work. When he turned to leave, he heard footsteps behind him. This female Xiao followed behind him without a word. Suemo instantly felt his temple start to hurt. Hey, there's no Jingxia you can earn by following me. I don't have the time to play with you, go play by yourself. There really is no Jingxia to be earned. I'm warning you, if you don't stay far away, I won't be polite to you. Suemo pretended to cast a spell. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the female Xiao's movement, and his pupils suddenly expanded. The other had also raised a hand. A light flashed at her fingertip, the air in the surroundings suddenly became sticky. Motherfucker. Suemo's soul almost ran out of his body. He hurriedly released the Ling power in his hands, hurriedly saying, let's just talk, let's just talk. The female Xiao still did not say a word, but followed Suemo, the light at her fingertip dissipating. As she lowered her arm, the air in the surroundings returned to normal. Such a powerful little girl. Pu Yao's shocked sigh sounded in Suemo's mind, but when Suemo heard it, it clearly had a hint of laughing at his misfortunes. Suemo had no solution. He basically could not communicate with this female Xiao. As to attacking, when he thought of that terrifying light, Suemo's heart shook. The last bit of hope was destroyed. If you want to follow, then follow. At the end of his rope, Suemo muttered. Ha 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 ha. Pu Yao's roaring laughter, and the silence from the female Xiao made Suemo suddenly feel that life was dark. The Xiaojia in the surrounding all looked with fear at the female Xiao behind Suemo. The strength that the female Xiao had just displayed made everyone jump. Suemo perceptively noticed that in these people's eyes, other than terror and fear, there was a hint of disgust. Suemo suddenly felt uncomfortable inside. But he also knew this was a normal response. When he had first seen the female Xiao, he had also been frightened by the scabies on her face. He randomly picked out a black ore from the pile of material and summoned the golden crow fire before throwing the ore inside. The burning golden crow fire instantly melted the ore into a puddle of red metal liquid. Suemo's mind moved, and it appeared as there was an invisible force that pulled the metal liquid. The metal liquid slowly changed shape. The female Xiao stared at the golden crow fire and metal liquid. After a while, a mask appeared on Suemo's hands. The black mask was very plain. There were no patterns or decorations. What was most strange was the ratio was slightly off, the right and left sides of the mask were not symmetrical. Suemo instantly felt slightly embarrassed. Oh, first time making a mask, my hand was raw. Oh, let's redo it. He was just going to remake one when a great force passed into his hands from the mask and then the mask flew into the hands of the female Xiao. The female Xiao put on the mask. Oh, let's remake that one, Suemo rubbed his hands and said embarrassedly. The right and left sides really were not symmetrical. Heavens! He had made such an elementary mistake. Looking at the strange looks from the subordinates in the surroundings, he wanted to find a hole in the ground and hide in it. This was a great embarrassment. The female Xiao did not say a word, and seemed to not have any intentions of taking off the mask. Seeing the situation, Suemo perceptively gave up on his plan of making another one. He tried to do his own work and found the female Xiao did not disturb him. She only stood there like a person made out of wood. Suemo gradually became used to her. However, there was a question that was swirling in his mind. What was going on? Chapter 241, City Construction Nanxing Village. The damaged walls had been reconstructed and it only took a span of a few months for this place to recover its prosperity. Large numbers of Xiuzhe had been transported over. This place also purchased all kinds of ore and other materials, but most importantly, this place sold ling grains, but it was limited. Just this was enough to cause all of Little Mountain Jie to shake. Just as all of Little Mountain Jie's eyes were on Nanxing Village, a crowd of people appeared soundlessly in a mountain valley. We've searched. There are 2 Jingxia mines here. The Jingxia produced here is not high, only 3rd grade. This area used to belong to Sky Star sect. Sky Star sect did not manage to avoid the calamity, and there were heavy fatalities. The other people have disappeared. Other than Jingxia mines, there are 3 more mines in this area. They do not produce much. The primary product is bright flash rock, black ling stone bead, and greenwater stone. The primary producer of greenwater stone comes from that pond right there. It is called Sky Star Lake. Xia Shan had done a large amount of work to research all of this. Suemo gave a satisfied expression. Let's choose this place. He then asked, what about the surrounding powers? Have they been investigated? Gongsun Cha smiled shyly and timidly, they have all been destroyed. It was not the first time he saw Gongsun Cha smile shyly like a teenage boy, but the coldness in Xia Shan's heart still could not be controlled. Gongsun Cha's trademark timid smile was called Lil Miss Slight Smile in the camp, and all of them were afraid of it as though it was a snake or scorpion. The female Xiao wearing the black mask stood behind Suemo. This female Xiao that had suddenly appeared had attracted everyone's attention. However, no one dared to challenge her. Even Xia Shan was intimidated by her powerful strength. Xia Shan, whose cultivation had reached Ningmai 3rd statum and was a step away from Jindan, but even he did not have the courage to face the mysterious female Xiao. Many people had been secretly speculating if the female Xiao was a Jindan. No one dared to ask, even Boss could not get her to speak. No one believed their face was bigger than Boss. Looking at the female Xiao that was always steps from the boss, they felt that his was pretty good. With such a powerful guard, Boss wouldn't encounter any danger. This meant they did not have to worry that Boss would accidentally die, and they would collectively die as well. Dying without understanding why was an extremely depressing thought. Suemo did not have a solution to her following him. The female Xiao was of unknown origins, and Suemo naturally did not want her to overhear such secret information. But there was no way around it. A few days ago, they had tried to sell ling grains. However, that was just the beginning. What would come next were the interactions with the different factions. That was the most important part of this battle, which had no death. As long as he could handle these interactions cleanly, no one could shake his position as chief elder of the outer hall. With the great weapon of ling grains in his hand, he was full of confidence about the upcoming battle. Sky Moon Jie, a nondescript mountain valley, was abnormally silent. A figure landed from the sky. In a blink, it disappeared into the mountain valley. This Xiuzhe then appeared at the bottom of the valley. The bottom was covered in dense layers of jinji that would make people's scalp prickle. It continued on for a long distance, and it was possible to see that the person who set down the jinji was an expert. It was not possible to see a hint from outside the valley. This Xianxia made his practiced way through the alarming jinji without even looking. With a few twists and turns, he headed straight to a cliff face. The cliff face rippled and the person disappeared. The scene instantly changed inside. A seemingly borderless grass plain, a winding river. No one would have ever thought that such a large grass plain could be hidden in a mountain valley. Secret realm. If someone saw such a strange place, they would have shouted in shock. This was a secret realm. Entering the secret realm, this Xianxia's expression instantly lightened. The thick Ling power made him feel unspeakably comfortable. He flew straight towards the big river. There was a camp there. A few Xianxia flew out of the camp in welcome. "Huh, you came back." The Xianxia in the welcoming entourage smiled as he gave a greeting. "Must have been difficult." "No way about it." The Xianxia who had just flown in said helplessly. "Got stuck with this mission." "You guys have it easy, it seems you have made pretty good progress." "Ha." All of the Xianxia had proud expressions. "In the time you were gone, another 2 people entered Ningmai. The Ling energy here is just too thick." "That's so good." This Xianxia was somewhat jealous. "After this mission, you don't have to worry and can just cultivate." He, that's true." "Quick, leader is waiting for the news." N. The people instantly increased their speed as they flew towards the camp. After landing, this Xianxia instantly went to a tent. "Come in." A deep male voice. He hurriedly walked into the tent, and respectfully bowed to the male inside. "Darren, I have come back. It must have been great trouble for you." The male inside the tent raised his face and said in a warm tone. If Suemo saw this person, he would definitely recognize who it was. Bo Feng, the mysterious competitor that had appeared at the sword test conference, a person of mysterious power. It had been him who had bought the location of the secret sect from Suemo. He had actually stayed behind in Sky Moon Jia. Chapter 242, Bao Yi, when did Nanxing village become this prosperous? Lei Peng looked around, full of curiosity. It was not just him. The other people were also looking around with curiosity. The news that Clear Sky Sect was opening a market at Nanxing village had passed through Little Mountain Jia already. The intentions of Clear Sky Sect was clear in everyone's minds. However, the situation was stronger than the people, and resistance would be ineffective. Large numbers of Xianxia flooded Nanxing village, causing Nanxing village to become the most prosperous area of Little Mountain Jia. This was of great help to Lei Peng and his procession. From every angle, their procession was not too eye-catching. The leader was Xia Shan. Xia Shan had past experience as a leader, and he was skilled in creating relationships with people. Gong Sun Cha had appointed him as the leader of the troop for this mission. After seeing the many wonders of boss and head, and after multiple bloody battles, Xia Shan's mentality had changed greatly. The little thoughts that he had before had faded. He was clear that even if he was the leader, he could not reach the present level of success. Lei Peng and the others were willing to follow Zuomo not because they had been conquered by Zuomo's dominating aura, but because they found that their present lives were better than before. For the great majority of people, this was enough. The procession was 15 people. The person with the highest cultivation was Xia Shan, Ningmai third stratum. The person with the lowest cultivation was Nian Lu, Ningmai second stratum. At a glance, this group did not show any signs of power. But Xia Shan was full of confidence in the mission this time. All 15 people were old-timers of the camp, and were very good at teamwork, but what made him so confident was that all 15 people, including him, had comprehended essence. Xia Shan had led many Xianxia before, and had never encountered such a strong group. No, he had never even heard of one. There wouldn't be so many Xianxia that had comprehended essence in Clear Sky Sect's disciples. 15 Xianxia that had comprehended essence, this was definitely a terrifying amount of power. He felt strangely excited every time he thought that he was leading such a group. Before the appearance of the sword formation, there had only been 5 Xianxia in the camp that had comprehended sword essence. Up until now, there had been 30 people that had gone into the sword formation, and 9 that had comprehended essence. Of the 9, 8 had comprehended sword essence, and Lei Peng, who practiced a saber scripture, comprehended a saber essence. The one with the most unique situation was Zhong Ru. Zhong Ru had recovered from his previous wounds, and naturally comprehended fist essence. He was the only person of the group who had comprehended essence without going through the sword formation. This was another reason why these people were willing to follow Zuemo. Nothing could be more persuasive to these people than the increase in strength. Why did they join big sects? It was to increase their strength and breakthrough at an earlier time. Due to personality issues, most of these people had negative experiences with other sections. They were very clear of the scheming and plotting that occurred inside the bigger sections. In the camp, as long as you put your best into train, and were not afraid of death when you fought, you would receive a corresponding reward. With spells, talismans, the sword formation, and formations, everyone's strength was flying ahead. These 15 Xianxia who had comprehended essence were the elite fighters of the camp. Xia Shan believed that as long as they did not encounter a Jindan, their safety was guaranteed. Xia Shan did not worry about the problem of safety at all. What he was thinking about was if he could finish the mission more beautifully. But before that, he planned on visiting a familiar acquaintance of his. This old acquaintance of his was called Bao Yi, who was a black market business man that could buy anything. Before, he could always get some Ling grains, and was famed in the profession. Boss Bao, Xia Shan cheerfully gave a greeting. To avoid attracting unnecessary attention, he had come alone. Bao Yi was both thin and tall like a stick of bamboo. When he saw Xia Shan, his eyes instantly lit up as he said in a warm voice, "Head Xia, what wind blew you here? Come in, please sit. Please sit." He had made a few transactions with Xia Shan before. The two of them were quite familiar with each other. He knew that Xia Shan had about 100 people under his command. Customers like this were primary targets of attention. However, it had been quite a long time since Xia Shan had come. He had actually feeling that it was a pity since he had assumed that Xia Shan had been killed. He hadn't expected the other man to still be alive. For him, this was a good matter. Why is it so empty here? As Xia Shan walked in, he looked around and asked in puzzlement. Bao Yi's face instantly wrinkled. Oh, there's nothing to do. Now that Clear Sky Sect has come to directly trade, the business of us little people have become harder. Oh, isn't the Clear Sky Sect doing large business? Bao Yi explained, Clear Sky Sect only does transactions with big factions, but it isn't possible for anyone to do business with small groups. Without jade discs, it is impossible to buy Ling grains. With Boss Bao's skill, getting a few jade discs should be easy. Now, Xia Shan was really puzzled. Bao Yi's network was extremely complex and broad. He had ties with people from all levels of society. It should not be hard for him to get a few jade discs. Bao Yi grimaced, when a person is unlucky, they will even choke on water. The chief, elder of Clear Sky Sect Outer Hall, He Xiang, and I had a little conflict in the past. Xia Shan finally understood. He acted to frown. So it's like that. Then this won't be easy to do. Yes, exactly. Bao Yi's face was mournful as he sighed. I had come to Nansheng to see if there were any good opportunities. It's a coincidence that Boss Xie is also here. After 2 more days, I'm leaving. He managed to rouse his spirits. Does Boss Xie want to buy something? I have a bit left, not too much, but the quality isn't bad. If Boss Xia is interested, I can give a price and you can take the lot. Xia Shan's mouth continued to talk as his mind whirled furiously. If Boss wanted to build a city, then he wanted to do something big. He was not ignorant. He knew that it was not so easy to build a city. This Bao Yi might be a bit black-hearted, but he was an expert at business who also had hate towards Clear Sky sect. It was the first time Xia Shan had been given an important task. Naturally, he wanted to perform well. If he could accomplish a great service, Boss probably would not refuse him if he went and asked for a thread of golden crow fire. The mission this time was to find Xiuzha that knew how to build a city, but if he could find some more talents, wouldn't his service be greater? He had been a leader for a period of time, and naturally understood more as to how to think of problems from the perspective of a leader. Seeing Xia Shan did not seem to be interested in his wares, Bao Yi's heart became even more bitter. This recent while, the matter of He Xiang and he having previously had a conflict had somehow passed around. His business had instantly dropped and no one came to his doors. How could he not know what had gone on in the shadows? If this place does not want to keep ye, there naturally are places that can keep ye. Old Bao, there's nothing to be said about your abilities. We've made more than one transaction before, and we know each other very well. What about it? Do you have any interest in helping this brother? Xia Shan smiled cheerfully as he looked at Bao Yi. Bao Yi gazed with slight shock at Xia Shan. Xia Shan had spoken so plainly that he knew what it meant. But it was that bluntness that shocked him. Xia Shan might have 100 people, but in Little Mountain Jia, that was only a little faction. Right now, his tone was so grand, had Xia Shan struck it rich? He was very familiar with Xia Shan and knew that Xia Shan was not an arrogant and irrational person. As he thought inside, Bao Yi asked in return, does Boss Xia not care about worsening your relationship with Clear Sky sect? Xia Shan chuckled. Old Bao, don't probe. I dare to say this because I have some certainty. Bao Yi's expression became slightly wary. If this little brother goes, what will I do? Of course it is to do your old occupation, business. Xia Shan thought for a beat before saying, however, I don't dare to promise you. It depends on what Boss is going to say. Boss. Bao Yi was shocked. There was someone else behind Xia Shan. It definitely would not be a weak power if it had managed to take in Xia Shan. He examined Xia Shan, and saw the confidence that naturally spilled out when Xia Shan mentioned his boss. Also, this power did not seem to be very afraid of Clear Sky sect. This puzzled him. He could not think of any power in Little Mountain Jia that was not afraid of Clear Sky sect. Xia Shan was a clever person. Seeing Bao Yi, he knew what the other was thinking, and roared with laughter, using his words to enlighten Bao Yi. Why is Boss Bao wavering? I cannot think of any situation that is worse than the present one. Bao Yi thought, that was right, what could be worse than his present situation? Since the other already knew he was on bad terms with Clear Sky sect yet still dared to hire him, then he had to have some form of support. He had some savings but everyone knew how that he and Clear Sky sect were on bad terms. They probably had already started scheming against him. Clear Sky sect might restrict fighting in Nanxing village, but if he was robbed, it was very likely that Clear Sky sect had been acting against him up in the shadows. After thinking it through, he did not hesitate any longer. Since Boss Xia holds Bao Yi in such esteem, I'm not one to not recognize what is good for me. From now on, please take good care of me. Ha ha. That's fine, fine. Xia Shan's mood instantly rose. Bao Yi smiled. We didn't come here this time for the Ling grains, right? The word "we" instantly tightened the distance between the two people. Xia Shan was very satisfied that Bao Yi had entered his role so quickly. He raised a thumb up at Bao Yi. Old Bao is so smart. Boss heard that many Xiuzha were gathering in Nanxing village, and told me to come to see if we can hire some talents. He decided to reveal some information to Bao Yi. He had come to see Bao Yi originally to find some information, but out of consideration for safety, he had not directly said that he was looking into the xiuzha of the village. Bao Yi said in a deep voice, "What kind of talent does our boss want to hire? This little brother has stayed for a while at Nanxing village and might know something." Xia Shan's eye lit up. "Anyone that has one skill." Bao Yi had a general understanding. This boss that he had never met before had an extremely strong base, and his ambitions were not small. These days, in Little Mountain Jia, the days of any kind of xiuzha other than combat xiu were extremely difficult. Since he had decided to enter the others group, Bao Yi decided he needed to perform well. In any organization, in order to be recognized, the simplest method was to let the boss see your abilities, and understand your value. "Do we have enough manpower?" he asked. "Enough." Chapter 243, Jade Scroll. In the secret realm, his subordinate xiuzha were giving their reports. The Yao army has established their base in the Wukong Mountains. It is very heavily guarded. Our people do not dare to go close. Bo Feng nodded. "Do not alert them but keep an eye on them. If they make any unusual movements, report immediately." "Yes." Bo Feng asked some more questions about the details before letting the xiuzha leave. When the xiuzha left the tent, two figures suddenly appeared inside the tent. Bo Feng did not seem to be surprised. "What are you really looking for?" Gui Feng asked in a rough voice. At his side, Chang Heng's expression was indifferent as though he did not care about this question. "Haha, you'll know when it is time." Bo Feng smiled. Chang Heng was not interested in this matter. He stared at Bo Feng. "Give the other half of the scripture to me." Bo Feng said easily, "No problem." Gui Feng's expression changed. He seemed to be thinking. Suemo carefully looked at the black butterfly in front of him. Chun Yucheng was at his side, his eyes blazing as he observed the black butterfly. Suemo's mind had received a notice that the rainbow-marked butterfly had broken through its cocoon. Suemo had hurriedly pulled Chun Yucheng with him. When Chun Yucheng heard that the rainbow-marked butterfly had finished its metamorphosis, it instantly stirred his interest and he took a rare absence from his beast pool. The rainbow-marked butterfly had completely changed. The rainbow colors that had covered its entire body had disappeared. Now, its body was completely black, contrasting against a pair of lively eyes. "Can the spells still be used?" Chun Yucheng asked. "Still usable, and there now seems to be one more spell." Suemo closed his eyes and carefully communicated with the black butterfly. When he started his communication, he instantly felt a difference compared to the past. Before, he could only feel some pieces of what the rainbow-marked butterfly could feel. Presently, he could clearly feel the emotions of the butterfly. The black butterfly had become more intelligent than before. So it leveled up. Chun Yucheng said with excitement. Previously, it was just a third-grade Ling beast. Now, it should be a fourth-grade Ling beast. No wonder it has another spell. Have you discovered what kind of spell it is? A very weird spell. Suemo's expression was slightly weird. What spell? Chun Yucheng asked impatiently. Poison Ling. Poison Ling? What kind of spell is that? Chun Yucheng was puzzled. He had never heard of this kind of spell. It is unclear. Suemo shook his head. He was also ignorant. The two people looked at each other, with their faces confused. However, they did find out that the rainbow-marked butterfly had leveled up to 4th grade. Due to the black color of its body, Suemo decided to change its name to Black Butterfly. He would have to slowly investigate what this poison Ling was. It would be great if it could level up to become a 5th-grade Ling beast. Suemo drooled as he dreamed. He decided that he would definitely feed anything poisonous to the black butterfly if he found them in the future. He had personally experienced how powerful a 5th grade Ling beast was. If the black butterfly could level up to 5th grade, it could definitely beat down the bloody horned serpent. Of course, he quickly wiped clean his drool. It had been so difficult to level up to 4th grade from 3rd grade. He could only dream about leveling up to 5th grade. He picked up the gourd as well. The poison inside the gourd had all dissipated. It was a pretty good container-type talisman, especially for containing substances that were intangible. He was not polite in picking it up. Chun Yuqing saw that he could not discover anything else, so he rushed back to the beast pool. Right after Chun Yuqing left, Gongsun Cha approached him immediately after. Zuemo saw that the other's expression was slightly strange and asked, "What? Did something happen? Take a look." Gongsun Cha handed over a jade scroll. Zuemo took the jade scroll and skimmed it. He jumped in fright. "Holy moly, they're crazy." "I was frightened too." Gongsun Cha grimaced. "However, these people are pretty good." The last sentence revealed his true thoughts. "It really is very good." Zuemo couldn't stop himself from reading further. The more the read, the wider his mouth grew. "Xixiang, do you think we will take?" "Yes." Zuemo shook like a basin of cold water had been poured over his head on a hot summer day. His energy then swelled up. Holding his neck in an arch, he shouted, "Of course, we'll take them. All of them. Every single one. Do not leave one behind." Ji Wei, Sun Bao and the other people that had been forging were frightened by the insanity that Zuemo displayed. Only the female Xiao that was standing nearby was unaffected, as though she had not heard it. In the camp, everyone was busy cultivating. The new members needed large amounts of training before they could join the combat system. Before this, they had all been normal Xiaojia, and were too unfamiliar with things like battle formations. "It is so boring." A Xiaojia sighed. When he glanced at the group of people who were training laboriously, he felt a burst of dullness. After the number of people grew, it was not suitable anymore to divide into small teams. Gongsun Cha reorganized the teams into 6 companies. Each company had 122 people, who were then divided into 6 platoons. They were led by a company leader and a vice company leader. Each platoon had 6 squads that were commanded by the platoon leader, who was assisted by the vice platoon leader. Each squad had 3 people, one of which was the squad leader. Due to the large number of new members, to help the new members quickly enter their roles, these old-timers that were now the company leaders had all taken up positions as instructors. However, to them, teaching the new people was an extremely boring task. When they saw the raw cooperation between the new members and their awkward movements, they were usually speechless. Even though they clearly knew that they had been no better when they first started, but they thirsted for battle. Gongsun Cha was like a successful wolf tamer. The sheep under his command had been slowly transformed into wolves. They had started to thirst for battle. Many people had admired Xia Shan and the others who had gone to carry out a mission. While they held admiration, they could only stay and stare. Those people were stronger than they were. They also understood that the stronger they were, the more likely it was that they would carry out more difficult missions, and had a chance to earn more merit. Even Gongsun Cha had never expected his unintentional actions had caused the sword formation to become the most attractive prize. Comprehending sword essence was the best path to increasing power. A person said without strength, "The earlier that we finish training these greenhorns, the earlier we get to rest. Laozi will never do this ever again." One of the people said furious, "This group of trash. They can't even perform the simplest 3-talent formation after all this time, they are so stupid. Please." Someone else beside him sneered, "Hey Z, you talk as though you were so skilled at the beginning. We weren't much better than them at the beginning. Oh, when can we go out on a mission? Laozi is so idle that my tastes have turned vegetarian." Hey Z wailed, his expression dejected. "Yes, these days are too boring. People beside him also sighed. Whoosh whoosh. A humming sound suddenly sounded above the formation without any warning. The two people stilled, looked at each other, and shook simultaneously before they jumped up from the ground like lightning. He Zi looked at the two new members that were still motionless and swore, "What are you doing sitting there? Move faster, this is the emergency signal." Finishing, he leaped into the air, the two new members hurriedly following behind him. Moving figures could be seen in the sky above the camp. The shouts of the company and platoon leaders ran out frequently. Faster, faster. What are you procrastinating for? Keep up. Find your position. Don't move around. A tense atmosphere covered the entire camp. All the Xianxia quickly gathered together. Within 30 breaths, all the Xianxia in the camp had flew into the air, and the ranks had finished assembling. The old-timers who saw Lilith Miss staring at them became excited. There was going to be something to do, a big thing. Gongsun Cha did not waste words. Seeing the troop had finished assembling, he waved his hand lightly. Everyone, move out. More than 700 Xianxia silently flowed like a soundless flood across the sky. Nanxing Village, Great Wind Merchant House. Little Wei, calculate the accounts for today, the storekeeper slowly savored the Ling tea and lightly ordered. Yes, Wei Qingbin instinctively answered. The storekeeper detected Wei Qingbin's inattentiveness, his face instantly darkening. What? You worried about something? Do you feel dissatisfied with the work? It was like Wei Qingbin had been woken up from a dream. When he saw the storekeeper's dark face, he knew that it was not good. He gave a smile, no, no. This one has just met a bit of a problem in my cultivation. Humph. The storekeeper snorted coldly. Cultivation. I hadn't seen before that little Wei has great ambitions. You want to reach Jindan. To live, you have to be reliable. Do you know how many people are trying to get your ration of 50 caddies of Ling grains per month? Cultivation. Don't waste this old man's Ling grains. Wei Qingbin's face flushed entirely red. The storekeeper glanced at him and drawled, one has to know their own limits. Little Mountain Jia has not had cultivation in a long time ago. 2/10 off this month's wage of Ling grains. When he finished, he strode away. Wei Qingbin's head was bent, and he did not make a sound. Unknowingly, his fists were so tight that they had turned white. After the storekeeper had gone far away, he relaxed his fists. In his hand was a jade scroll. This was a jade scroll he had received 2 days ago. It was an announcement for hiring. The other had learned from somewhere that he had a skill at illusory formations and came to headhunt him. They promised 200 caddies of Ling grains per month. Wei Qingbin had come from a sect, and his best skill was some little illusory formations. He could make extremely exquisite mirage formations. However, this great skill had not provided him with any benefit in a situation such as the present one. He had asked around everywhere, almost spending all his savings to beg to get a job like this. Accounting, hard labor, cleaning, he did everything. Compared to those Xianxia that worried for Ling grains, he was much luckier. Rationally, he could settle down, but when he received this jade scroll, his heart uncontrollably started to jump. He did not know how many times the Xixiang had mocked him for playing with those little formations. In many people's eyes, he was the classical example of someone who only played around. The sect elders had thought of him as one who did not treasure their talent, especially after he had cultivated Ningbai, and had treated him coldly. This job might let him scrape by, but he didn't know how many eye rolls he had gotten. The enormous store, other than the storekeeper, he was the only one remaining. He had to do all the work. For some reason, the sneer and disdain of the storekeeper flashed in front of his eyes. Impulsiveness was the demon, impulsiveness was the demon. He continuously told himself, but his feet uncontrollably started to walk towards the outside. What are you doing? You idiot! I raised a trash like you for nothing. You don't have to come tomorrow. The storekeeper's bellows came from behind him. Wei Qingbin suddenly felt his body was unspeakably light, his steps increasing speed. In the dark, his eyes were as bright as jewels. Chapter 244, Consensus in Little Mountain Jia. No one would pay attention to the flow of Xianxia. What everyone was attentive to was the flow of Ling grains. As for Xianxia, who would care? Wei Qingbin found the place according to the address on the jade scroll. His heart was slightly insecure. He should have first confirmed it. If this jade scroll was a joke that someone played on him, then it would be terrible. This was the place. Two lifelike authoritative and ferocious stone lion-type auspicious beasts were standing by the two sides of the gate. He had some experience and knew these were mechanized golem beasts. They usually were motionless, but if one dared to attack then they would attack at the first possible moment. The black metal gate was tightly shut. The light of Jinji occasionally flashed by. He was slightly reassured. Families that had this kind of house in Nanxing village should have at least some power. He put his palm on the copper bell diagram carved on the door and channeled Ling power. Ding dong. The bell sound was clear and ethereal. A moment later, the metal door slowly opened, a brawny man with a face full of scruff examined him, his gaze as sharp as a knife. Wei Qingbin felt his body tighten. He might be a Ningmai but his combat abilities were very low. He had broken through to Ningmai due to a moment of enlightenment after working with illusory formations. He nervously swallowed. The brutal aura exuded by the large man in front of him created fear in him. I am Wei Qingbin. 2 days ago, I received a jade scroll, it said, hearing Wei Qingbin stammer on for a long time yet unable to clearly state his meaning. Lei Peng lost his patience and interrupted, okay. This is the place, you didn't go to the wrong place. Finishing, he raised Wei Qingbin with one hand as though he was picking up a little chicken, and flew inside. Wei Qingbin closed his eyes in fright, his entire body shaking. Lei Peng rolled his eyes inside. He didn't know who had suggested that he should be the one to welcome this group of people. Every single one person in this group was as cowardly as mice, and shook whenever they saw him. This compound was just one of Bao Yi's secret properties. As cunning as a rabbit, he had backups upon backups. That was his usual conduct. Another one came. The Ling power on Lei Peng's hand spat slightly, and Wei Qingbin was stunned into unconsciousness. He carelessly threw him on the ground. There's already 8 in this batch. With him, we only need one more before we can send them off, Xia Shan said with satisfaction. He had exceeded his mission this time. According to Bao Yi's intelligence, they had found 3 Xianxia skilled in building cities. Without an exception, none of the 3 were able to resist the temptation of 200 caddies of Ling grains per month. He couldn't help but sigh. If they were anywhere outside of Little Mountain Jia, no matter where they went, they would be treated courteously. But in Little Mountain Jia where life was worth as much as grass, just 200 caddies of Ling grains was enough to buy a Xianxia's life. As a Xianxia, Xia Shan couldn't not help but marvel. Bao Yi was off to the side. He was rejoicing that he had made the right choice. Even though he had not seen the boss yet, but he had been successively shocked by boss strength. Up until now, more than 60 people had been sent away. The people that had been delivered outside seemed to have disappeared into thin air. There definitely were people who were cooperating with them outside of the city, and that number would not be small. This group of people really were daring to act so boldly under Clear Sky Sect's nose. However, he felt very good secretly at being able to dig at Clear Sky Sect walls. He really had his action of throwing in the lot beautiful. He Xiang looked down at the leaders of the different factions, the feeling of accomplishment in his heart reaching the peak in an instant. Previously, when he met any of the people seated here, he would have to nod his head and bend his waist, but right now, he could clearly capture the fear they had of him in the deepest part of their eyes. This feeling was really good. He quickly pulled himself back. He was very clear what his mission was. A warm and careful smile piled onto his face. His voice was very light like the clouds high up in the sky. My thanks to everyone here for waiting so long, then we shall now begin. 70 people, it should be enough. How about it? Let's stop. Lei Peng said impatiently. They had been guarding here every day. That Clear Sky sect was really trash. They hadn't reacted in the slightest. In the beginning, he had thought that this time would be a big mission. Who knew that it was so boring and tasteless? He just wanted to return to camp now. Xia Shan did not pay attention to him. He looked at the list and frowned. Why did the remaining people not come? Hearing this, Bao Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. We used Ling grains to attract them. In the end, it is like business, you and I have to both be willing. The remainder probably are living quite well now, and do not want to move. Then we will just leave them. Xia Shan was slightly discontent. He did not want to leave any regrets in the first mission he was leading. Bao Yi spread his hands. Then what? It's not like we can kidnap them. Kidnap them. Xia Shan's eyes lit up as he clapped in excitement. This idea is great. How come I didn't think of it? Hearing this, Lei Peng, who was at so much leisure that he felt restless, was also excited and furiously nodded. Not bad, not bad. We'll kidnap all of them. We won't leave one behind. The other people snickered as they exchanged looks. Zhong Ru helplessly raised his eyelids. His samadhi had been interrupted once again. Bao Yi paled. No way. No way. It is very lucky that our recent actions had not attracted Clear Sky Sect's attention. If we go to kidnap people, we would certainly alarm Clear Sky Sect, then it would be great trouble. We're not afraid. Lei Peng twisted his mouth and said scornfully. Bao Yi hurriedly looked at the other people. When he saw the anticipatory expressions on their faces, he felt his vision darken. He thought of Zhong Ru. In his mind, Zhong Ru had always been calm and reliable. He definitely would not approve of this course of action. But before he could look at Zhong Ru, he heard Zhong Ru say in a voice filled with helplessness, "Should we do it now? Let's go, let's finish so I can go back sooner to train my samadhi." Bao Yi felt his head instantly sink into stillness. All 15 people agreed to the kidnapping. From the suggestions to passing the motion, it hadn't taken more than a minute. To be able to plan such a large kidnapping under the mighty Clear Sky Sect's eyes, it was enough to make everyone except Bao Yi feel their blood boil. Only this way would they not have wasted their journey here. Since they had decided, everyone quickly started to finalize the plan. After following Lil Miss for so long, they had started to learn how to make a plan, and the beginnings of being professional brutes. Bao Yi's face was pale as he listened from the side. He decided he would definitely stay far away from this group of madmen in the future. Especially Zhong Ru. Only now did he know how wrong he had been. Zhong Ru usually indifferent, but when he spoke, malicious and evil ideas were lightly thrown out. With one word from one and another from the other, a simple and rough plan was quickly born. When Wei Qingbin woke up, he found that he was on someone's back. The sound of wind that occasionally sounded around him let him know that he was flying at high speed through the air. He did not dare to move. He knew the limits of his own abilities. Up until now, he did not make a sound. He slightly turned his head, and warily scanned the surroundings. Not 10 zhang away from him, there was a Xiaoxia. He was also carrying a person on his back. When he clearly saw the surroundings, he was greatly shocked. There were more than 100 Xiaoxia around him. Of those, only 20 of the Xiaoxia were carrying people. The other Xiaoxia had placed them at the very center. Wei Qingbin finally thought of what had occurred before he had become unconscious. Which faction did this group of people belong to? They really looked like a big faction. Even though he did not know his own future, but he was full of anticipation. It was very clear that this was an extremely well thought out plan. More than 100 Xianxia were protecting and transporting the 20 of them. It could be seen how importantly they were being treated. The other side had spent such effort, so what they aimed for definitely would not be small. Notice your rhythm. Control the output of Ling power. Preserve the flexibility of the ranks. Combat units at the outermost layer, be on your guard. Try to avoid the clouds. He could hear endless shouts of scolding. What Wei Qingbin found wondrous was that the Xianxia in the surroundings did not make a sound as they continuously adjusted their position. For some unknown reason, the stern silence this group of Xianxia maintained made Wei Qingbin to feel a different kind of power. He couldn't help but make a closer examination. The troop that was in front of his eyes were different than any other troop he had seen before. More than 100 people were flying, but the ranks were so organized it was as though they had been drawn out with a ruler. The elites that he had seen before had been more relaxed and spread out. In front of this group, they seemed more like a random group of soldiers. He could occasionally see Xianxia in groups of 3 or 5 moving far away. Those were probably sentries. The more he saw, the greater his shock was. The power that this troop displayed surpassed the limits of his imagination. Wei Ran's mind was tightly alert. He was the division leader of the 2nd Division, but before this, he had never led a group larger than 30 people. He was worried that he would not do a good job, and thus he was extremely attentive. He also worked hard at his cultivation. This was the first mission he was undergoing as a division leader. The mission that Gong Sun Cha had given him was not difficult: move forward along a predetermined path, and transport the 20 people back to the camp. When he had first heard the mission, he had released a breath, but when he saw the path, his expression became unnatural. This path drew out an extremely large curve. It was akin to having traveled in a circle before returning to the camp. He did not understand why Lil Miss would make such a complex and roundabout path. What worried him the most was this path would take him through the territories of multiple factions. This meant that they could be attacked at any time. However, when he saw the unnatural expressions of the other division leaders, he instantly understood. This was a mission, but it was also a test. Lil Miss was testing whether they had the abilities to be a division leader. Up until now, they had not encountered any dangers. However, they had encountered several Xianxia yesterday that had skirted around them before leaving. Wei Ran was experienced in battle and understood that people had locked onto his group. On the entire way, he had constantly maintained the troop formations for combat. Seeing the increasingly practiced display from the Xianxia under him, he couldn't help but sigh. As expected, true combat would temper a person. The improvement they had made in the last few days surpassed the improvement they had made in the previous month. A blinding red light suddenly exploded in the sky in front of them. Wei Ran's pupils suddenly shrank. It had come. That was the warning spell that their sentries had cast. He tried to compose himself, his mind furiously thinking back to what Lil Miss usually did. He raised his right hand to copy the aloofness of Lil Miss, his voice coming out abnormally cold. Prepare for battle. Chapter 245, First Battle. The sentries that had been swimming at the edges started to spread out. Their job was not to engage in battle, but to observe the direction of the entire battlefield. Wei Ran's expression was cold, his lips tightly pressed together. There were about 200 people in the enemy that were full of murderous intent as they charged. Wei Ran straightened his back like a sharp and upright spear. He slightly floated in the air, the shouts of the platoon leaders as they shouted at maximum passing into his ears. All of you, be alert. Notice your position. What is in front of you is a pile of trash. Kill them. Kill them all. Later, don't think of anything. Where I go, charge after me. Whoever fucking lingers behind, watch how I'll take care of him later. Follow what you usually do during training. The platoon leaders were doing their last adjustments before the battle. Most of the people under their command were greenhorns. They all had above-average individual power, but in this kind of battle tactic style that demanded rigor, so cooperation was the crux of victory. The rough, serious, or relaxed mobilizations burrowed into Wei Ran's ears. He uncontrollably started to heat up. He did not notice that a smear of red had appeared in his eyes. This really made a person's blood boil. Watching as the other side neared, Wei Ran raised his right hand again. All the noise disappeared. All 122 Xianxia were completely silent. The entire troop was like a great bow that had been fully drawn. Everyone's nerves were tense to their limits, especially the Xianxia at the front. The Ling power in their body vibrated, their presence continuously rising. However, their feet seemed to be nailed to their spot. Wei Qingbin unconsciously stopped breathing, his mind a patch of blankness. He had never experienced such a shocking battle. This patch of silence was like an invisible noose that wrapped around him and slowly tightened, choking his throat shut. It was slightly suffocating. He opened his mouth to pant heavily. He widened his eyes, and instinctively stared at the Xianxia at the front raise his right hand. His entire body started to unconsciously shake. He didn't know if it was in terror or excitement. Wei Ran coldly watched as the enemy entered the range of attack, the raised right hand suddenly chopping down. Kill! Pia! The air exploded crisply like a firework. The furiously rampaging Ling power of the 20 Xianxia that were at the front platoon suddenly lost their restraints and exploded. 20 figures suddenly disappeared into the air. Pia! It was another soul-shaking explosion. 20 Xianxia from the second platoon also disappeared into the air. Pia! The third platoon quickly followed behind. The trademark 3-section wave killing charge. Each little troop carried a gigantic sword energy 20 zhang above their heads. This was an attack created by the merging of 3 Xianxia's power. This kind of Ling merging technique could only be activated when the 3-talent formation reached a certain skill level. The gigantic sword energies tore through the air and howled. On the entire battlefield, all the other sword energies and spells lost color in comparison. In front of the gigantic sword energy, individual sword energies were as fragile as chopsticks, breaking upon impact. As fast as lightning. One platoon had 6 teams. It was as though 6 staggered blades cut right to the middle of the enemy. Blood rained through the sky. 6 deep bloody marks appeared in the ranks of the enemy. Anywhere they passed, if one was just brushed, it meant either cutting off the limbs or breaking the spine. With destructive force, they penetrated through the enemy formation. The enemy leaders' eyes bulged out of their sockets. Drag them down. Their later power, just as he had spoken halfway, the ghostly whale-like howl of the gigantic sword energy sounded again. The second platoon had arrived. 6 gigantic sword essences cut from a small angle on the right as they curved into the enemy formation. Pew pew pew. After a string of alarming sounds of cut of limbs and broken bones, the 6 gigantic sword essences plowed out 6 broad bloody groves. Wails passed into everyone's ears. The third platoon attacked from the opposite angle. Just as the second platoon had finished passing through the enemy formation, the third platoon had coincidentally entered the center of the enemy formation. Wei Ran pressed his lips tightly together. The power of the 3-section wave killing charge was evident. The courage of the enemy had been stolen, their morale plummeted and they had no more desire to battle. What he needed to do next was lay down the last straw that would break the camel's back. The 4th and 5th platoons suddenly attacked. The enemy, whose courage had already been stolen, panicked when they saw the 4th and 5th platoons press forward. In an instant, They broke formation and their lines collapsed as they scattered in all directions. Wei Ran's body finally relaxed. The battle had been settled. The three-section wave-killing charge was peerless in its killing power, but it was not as though it did not have weaknesses. Its biggest weakness was that it was weak in its follow-up. If the enemy could stop the first few cycles of attacks, then they would be the ones in danger. The giant sword energies could defend, but the Ling power consumed was extremely terrifying. Gathering up all the Ling power before the charge was not just a posture. Wei Ran released a breath. This battle was much smoother than he had imagined. It now had no meaning. The leaders of the platoons directed the little teams to continuously move and cut. If there was a small gathering of people at one location, they were like sharks that tasted blood and would leap over. The fearful enemy fighters did not hesitate when they saw the situation, all of them turning and fleeing. Wei Ran hurriedly sent an order to not pursue. Their mission was to safely reach the camp, not to kill enemies. However, when he noticed some scattered Xianxia that had been watching from far away, he guessed that those were scouts from other factions. This battle should have intimidated many people, he pondered inside. The enemy had completely fled in a short while Wei Ran ordered some Xianxia to clean up the spoils, and everyone else landed to set up camp. The Xianxia that had just come out of battle all had excited expressions lingering on their faces, but they still meticulously completed their orders. All the platoon leaders all released a breath of relief. This kind of battle was just a minor matter to them, but they had still been worried about the new members under their command. In total, no major incidents had occurred, but combat had exposed many problems. Some squads had not performed to their training standards when they had sent out the gigantic sword energy in the fight, and almost were not able to penetrate the ranks of the enemy. If they could not penetrate the ranks, and were bogged down in the enemy formation, the enemy would immediately have swarmed and torn them to pieces. These platoon leaders still felt fear when they thought of it. Wei Ran did not interfere with the platoon leaders lecturing the Xianxia who had made mistakes. He silently patrolled the camp. A while later, the Xianxia that finished cleaning up returned. The spoils of victory were given to the vice division later who would give them to Lil Miss when they returned, and then divided according to contributions. Wei Qingbin gaped. The swiftness in which the battle had finished with had surpassed his imagination. When he heard the platoon leaders swear at their subordinations, he couldn't believe it. Was this not enough? Such crisp and clean combat, such strong subordinates, then why were they being sworn at? He was not skilled at battle, but that did not mean he did not have good eyes. He could generally see the traces of the skill of a troop. In his view, this completely unfamiliar and unique troop was the strongest that he had ever seen without exception. They were too demanding. Wei Qingbin was unable to understand. This victory was great motivation to the Xianxia who were being transported. Their anticipation towards their destination rose. In the chaotic little mountain Jia, martial strength was the most effective guarantee of survival. Nanxing Village. He Xiang looked at the fake smiles on the faces in front of him. His temple throbbed. The negotiations were more difficult than he had imaged. These factions seemed to have reached a certain agreement in secret, their positions were at a strange consensus. Even the leaders that he had a good relationship with before had reversed their attitudes and remained silent. He knew that these people just wanted to bargain, but for him who wanted to show his accomplishments, his abilities would only be displayed if he could push the price to the bottom. There were more than a few that were scheming after his position. He did not want to give them an opportunity. He smiled, not showing his thoughts. Everyone is tired today, let's take a rest. This one has prepared a banquet especially for this, please, everyone come attend. The leaders exchanged looks with each other, rose, and said they were tired and wanted to rest. He Xiang did not force them, smiling as he sent them out the door. When the last leader left, his dark expression could not be disguised any longer. He needed a way to divide them, he thought inside. Just as he turned to leave, he coincidentally caught the mirth in the eyes of one of the other elders and his mood instantly became even more terrible. "Is everyone sure of their target?" Xia Shan asked as he looked at everyone. Everyone nodded. Lei Ping rumbled, "Motherfucker, Laozi even had to watch him as he went to the bathroom, it really is unlucky." Everyone laughed lightly. To guarantee they would succeed with one blow, everyone had rehearsed before. They had divided the 10 targets among them. "We will move in 2 hours," Xia Shan did not waste words. All 15 people had their own techniques. He might have the highest cultivation, but he did not dare to posture. Fortunately, everyone was rule-abiding and did not need him to nag. 15 people silently spread out in all directions. Lei Peng's target was a guy skilled in dan-making. Even though Ling materials were now in short supply in Little Mountain Jia, but some businesses still had some in stock. Due to this person had found a pretty good job. Consequently, when he had received the Jade Scroll, he had weighed his options, and decided to stay with his current employer. Especially since his current employer was good to him and the Jade Scroll was of unknown origins. He was not willing to take the risk. For some reason, he felt the willies today as though something was going to happen. This caused him to be unable to focus. Every time he had this feeling, there never was anything good. He raised his head to look at the sky. The clouds were very low in the air, dense and suffocating. "Medicine Master, the owner is calling you." The busboy hurriedly rushed over. "Oh, I'm going now." He refocused and hurriedly moved. There was probably another job for him to do. He had just passed through into the backyard when he suddenly felt pain at the back of his head. His vision darkened, and he did not know anything else. Lei Peng held him with one hand and looked around. Looking around to see if he had alarmed any other people, he grinned silently before disappearing into the air. However, not everyone had the same good fortune as him. For example, Nian Lu. Nian Lu looked with panic at his target. A female Xiu skilled with livestock. She was presently teaching the other people how to put together feed for Ling beasts. These apprentices were extremely respectful and listened carefully. The time to act had arrived. Seeing that the target would definitely not be leaving soon, Nian Lu gritted his teeth, and decided to move. His figure was like a ghost that appeared behind the female Xiu. His hand gently chopped, his left hand raising and grasping. The unconscious female Xiu was on his back. His movements were clean and crisp. Only when he had disappeared through the door did the apprentices finally react, yelling in fear. The guards of the store were instantly alerted and flew into the air. The same situation, at the same time, occurred at different places in Nanxing village. Nanxing village instantly became a mess. Chapter 246, Ambush the Camp. Zuomo looked at the female Xiu and scratched his head. "You need a name. This way, we can call each other." After changing his body, his hair had become short. When he scratched, he felt the hair was prickly like metal wire. So strange. How could his hair be this hard? The female Xiu did not seem to hear him. When Zuomo had inspected her injuries last time, he found that there was a strange and icy power inside her body. The reason the alarming injuries inside her body had not worsened was due to this strange power. This unknown power was like strong spider silk that reached into every corner of her body. Zuomo would think sometimes that if the strange power did not exist, her body would shatter into pieces. The reason her presence caused fear in others should also be caused by this unknown power, Zuomo thought to himself. No one dared to go near her. Even Silly Bird, the silly big sister, did not dare to go within 3 zhang of her, not to mention the cowardly pair of Lil Pagoda and Lil Black. Seeing the female Xiu's lack of response, Zuomo put his attention back on the wiry hair on his scalp. He wouldn't be turning into a Yao beast, right? He thought inside. The 3 golden armor guards stood nearby with their swords. They also seemed to be slightly afraid of the female Xiao. Weren't the golden armor guards golems? Why would they be afraid of a person? The female Xiao was a puzzle. It seemed like there would be no result today. Sui Mo shook his head. He had persisted in chatting with the female Xiao every day to deepen their connection, but up until now, there was no result. She was like a stone statue that stood there motionlessly. Sui Mo had never even heard her speak. Was she mute? Sui Mo thought uncertainly. In his mind, this female did not seem to have come from a big sect, because she was truly too unclean and ugly. Behind the disheveled appearance was a mess of dense lichen-like scabies. The only part untouched was the pair of bare feet. In reality, Sui Mo had never seen such beautiful feet. Symmetrical and white like jade and porcelain. There were no flaws. They were warm and delicate, exquisite like nothing else. When Sui Mo had been inspecting her injuries, and when he had seen this pair of bare feet for the first time, his mind had blanked for a moment. They seemed to hold a fatal attraction that made one unable to move their gaze aside. It was a pity that scabies covered everything above the knees. She wore the mask and a loose hemp robe. Her bare feet were in the mud. The snowy white and fine bare feet and the black mud made a strong contrast. Every time Sui Mo saw it, he would uncontrollably stop breathing. What followed after would be pity. It was very pitiful for a woman to be covered in scabies. He sighed inside. He didn't know what he was sighing about. He flew onto a mountain peak. Looking into the distance, the sky was tourmaline and the white clouds were like silk. The wind was gentle and refreshing. At the base of the mountain, the Sky Star Lake was like a clear jewel embedded among the mountain peaks. Sui Mo's mood instantly opened up. Little Mountain Jia might have lost its Ling energy, but there was not much of a difference to these flora and wild beasts. Due to the lack of activity of Xiaoxia, the mountains were even more green. In order to construct the city, he moved the camp to Sky Star Mountain. He suddenly thought of the unwillingness on Chun Yucheng's face. He grinned. Chun Shidi was really a maniac about livestock. Ji Wei and Sun Bao led their subordinates and furiously rushed about. The amount of materials needed to construct a city was an exceedingly terrifying number. For example, the bricks. Most of them had to be cut from the mountain. Each piece had to be processed and carved with formations. It was not hard for Xiaoxia to cut rocks, but processing them was not as easy. To increase the speed, Sui Mo had set up a large formation to gather large amounts of golden crow fire again. Each person received a portion. The Xiaoxia naturally were overjoyed and worked harder. Each piece of bluestone was 3 zhang long, 1 zhang wide, and 1 zhang high. After the golden armor guards mined it, the Xiaoxia would start to process it. What caused Sui Mo to have a headache was the grade of the golden crow fire was too high. If they were the slightest bit inattentive, these second-grade bluestones would turn into a pile of molten rocks. Later, the problem was finally solved when they decided to first carve the formations before they processed with the golden crow fire. However, during the entire processing method, the bluestone bricks would shrink to more than half its original size and turn to a blue-gold color. The quality was extremely dense and hard. Sui Mo had experimented. Even if he chopped with a flying sword, sparks would fly but the brick would not be damaged. Only when Sui Mo channeled all the Ling power in his body would the sword cut halfway into the brick. Such a material would not be enough to use to make Ling armor, but it was more than sufficient to use for city walls. 50 Xiaoxia were all tasked with processing bluestone bricks. Sui Mo himself was busy with surveying the geography. The newly constructed city had to have formations. The formations he set up this time were to face a Jindan. This was an unprecedented test for Sui Mo. The large formations he had set up before, including the large formation on Desolate Wood Reef, were not enough to stop a Jindan. He had seen Jindan before, but had never fought against one before. He did not know how powerful they are, but he knew they were definitely more powerful than he could imagine. There was an innate difference in terms of comprehension of Ling power between Ningmai and Jin Dan. He did not know how great this innate difference was. He could only do as much as he was able. The path was dangerous. Looking at the mountains in the distance, Suo Mo's eyes were black and deep. Nian Lu was carrying a person on his back while the scenery flashed by. His speed had not been impeded at all. If one looked closely, they would find that a white lotus was under his feet. With the white robes, the tender white lotus flower, he looked unspeakably handsome as he flew in the wind. The eyes of many young females along his path lit up. Whoa! So handsome! The shrieks of the female Xiu were endless. The Xiuzhe that were pursuing him heard the exclamations, causing their expressions to become even uglier. Nian Lu did not use any disguise at this time. He picked the most straightforward path, a straight line. Not just him, the other 9 people had also picked straight lines. From different places within the village, they all sprinted towards the village gate of Nanxing village. If one looked down from above Nanxing village, they would see 10 figures drawing out 10 straight lines that were going to intersect at the village gate. Behind them, there were between 50 and 60 Xiuzhe who seemed to be attracted and pulled towards the village gate. Many Xiuzhe flew into the sky. They were watching the spectacle. Inside, they were very shocked. Who dared to be so presumptuous in Clear Sky Sect's territory? Lei Peng was the first to reach the village gate. He even had the leisure to look back at his fellows that were sprinting towards him. Giving a smug grin, he then turned and slowly went through the village gate. The other 9 people simultaneously saw the smug expression on Lei Peng's face, and they all rolled their eyes at the same time. Without needed to exchange a word, they snorted, and moved faster. Ear-piercing howling instantly roared through Nanxing village. The 9 figures were like 9 sharp arrows that howled as they headed straight for the village gates. The gate of Nanxing village was just a symbolic construction. He Xiang had never expected people to dare to scheme against Clear Sky Sect. Who would dare to rampage on Clear Sky Sect's territory? Only if that person did not want to keep living in Little Mountain Jie. Due to this, the defenses of Nanxing village were pitifully weak. The 9 figures flashed past at high speeds. The pitiful gates were torn to pieces by the knife-like tailwinds. Dust and wood flew at the village gates. The Xiuzhe in pursuit directly ran into it. Seeing the situation, they did not slow down. A light flashed across their Ling armor and their Ling shields were opened as they prepared to directly go through the village gate. I just knew that these people want us to eat their dust. Inside the dust, someone complained. Countless sword energies suddenly shot out of the dust like bats hiding in the dark that showed their vampiric teeth. There's an ambush. The pursuing Xiuzhe all paled. Pew pew pew. The Xiuzhe at the very front basically had no time to react. Their Ling armor was instantly penetrated like it was made of papier-mâché. Several bloody holes appeared on the body of this Xiuzhe. The expression of this Xiuzhe instantly froze, his body losing control and falling into the dirt like a bag of sand. It was not just him alone. Several of the Xiuzhe in the front did not survive. Sword essence. The Xiuzhe at the back paled. Such destructive sword energies, there was only one possibility, sword essence. Only Sword Xiu that comprehended sword essence could release such a terrifying sword energy which could so easily penetrate Ling armor and kill with one strike. There were not many sword energies, but they were of different colors. It was clear they had been released by different Sword Xiu. There wasn't just one Sword Xiu who had comprehended sword essence. The expressions of this group of Xiuzhe changed drastically. Sword Xiu who comprehended sword essence were rare. 1 in 100 of Ningmai Sword Xiu comprehending sword essence was considered a rare event. Why did Sword Xiu always persist in trying to comprehend sword essence? That was because the power of the sword energies were much greater if one comprehended sword essence. This kind of increase depended on the individual and the sword scripture, but it was certain that sword shio who comprehend sword essence were much scarier than sword shio of the same cultivation who had not comprehended sword essence. 7 sword shio died in the first encounter. Other than fear, the other people rejoiced inside that they had not been so close in their pursuit. What made them even happier was that the collision between the two sides had swept away the scattered dust. The other side also showed themselves. 5 people. There were only 5 people. Their hearts were slightly reassured. Even if these 5 people all comprehended sword essence, but the number was too small. There were 50 to 60 on their side. Zhong Ru stood on the street with his eyes closed, his hand holding the 4-flanged Vajragata. There was no joy or sorrow in his heart. His beaded bracelet had been destroyed in the battle with the bloody horned serpent. Zhuemo had felt especially guilty and had the idea of finding a talisman for Zhong Ru. However, Zhong Ru was a rare Dhyana Shio. Dhyana talismans were even harder to find. Zhuemo had suddenly recalled that he had a damaged 4-flanged Vajragata in his ring. That 4-flanged Vajragata was a true Dhyana Shio talisman. When Zhong Ru had used his full power with his bracelet, Zhuemo had caught a thread of the mysteries of Dhyana talismans. He had put in great thought and reforged the 4-flanged Vajragata before giving it to Zhong Ru. When this 4-flanged Vajragata came into Zhong Ru's hands, Zhong Ru instantly knew this wasn't a Dhyana talisman of a low grade. The Gata itself contained extremely abundant Buddhist mindfulness. He did not know which great elder had carried this Gata along his path of enlightenment. Over time, this 4-flanged Vajragata had accumulated large amounts of Buddhist mindfulness. The power that this 4-flanged Vajragata could express in Zhuemo's hands wasn't even 1% of what it could be in Zhong Ru's hands. The Buddhist mindfulness resting in the Gata itself was extremely beneficial to Zhong Ru's cultivation. What was most valuable was that there were many scenes of the comprehensions that the elder had experienced in Buddhist fixity. Zhong Ru, who had been troubled due to his lack of a teacher, progressed quickly upon receiving such a treasure. Other than his fist essence, even his abhina which he had thought he would never form in this lifetime had unintentionally formed. He felt the warm and cold presence that came from the 4-flanged Vajragata just before the sword energies disappeared. Zhong Ru suddenly opened his tightly closed eyes. Chapter 247, Rainbow Mirage Light. Zhong Ru's gaze was indifferent. His left hand held the 4-flanged Vajragata, his right hand formed a seal. Duo. His voice resounded like a vast bell. It was not high and exciting, but it could be heard throughout Nanxing village. With him as the center, an invisible hurricane swept outwards. The faces of the Xiuzha all changed. The Ling armors they were wearing were already activated, but this shout seemed to have sounded from the bottom of their hearts. Their Ling shields were not effective at all. What shocked them even more was all the Ling power in their bodies suddenly froze for a moment. Abhina, truth speech. The other 4 people took the opportunity to jump off the ground. Lightning fast, they were like 4 flying swords that thrust into the crowd. Ma Fan only took a quick glance and the battlefield was imprinted in his mind. After being the core for so long, his grasp of the entire battle situation was unparalleled in the camp. He had undergone the greatest change in the camp, or rather, he had improved the most, especially the presence he now had. When he had been made the core, his performance had been very inexperienced. After gradually adjusting, a presence appeared on his body, one that was extremely authoritative. He had previously been an eternally roaming wolf that always gave people the sense of danger. The present him was less attention-catching. His features were ordinary. In a crowd, it was now harder to pick him out. Illusory shadowless sword of destruction was the killing move he had used the most in the past, but as his understanding of sword essence and battle had deepened, he started to experiment with simpler sword moves. Gradually, the number of times he used, illusory shadowless sword of destruction, had decreased, and his edges had gradually been hidden. After he learned the 5th grade, void movement, method, which lacked the dazzle of his previous illusory movement method, the threat he posed increased rather than decreased. In a chaotic battle, it was difficult for the enemy to even detect his existence. Ma Fan's stealth was wonderfully displayed at this time. He was like an unnoticeable thread of light smoke floating among this crowd. There were no grand sword moves. Even his sword energies were just several CUN long. He was like a little swordfish, but no one other than Xia Shan could rival his efficiency. In the blink of an eye, he had defeated 7 or 8 people. Many people had not even found they had been attacked before he had disappeared without a shadow. Compared to Ma Fan's clean and high-efficiency killing intent that was concealed, Xia Shan was a completely different style. Keen. As keen as a sword. He was like an unsheathed sword. Countless 5-colored sword essences swam around him like rainbow flying swords. The pressuring sword essences intercrossed, extremely beautiful, and full of killing intent. Xia Shan was a clever person. He knew his strengths and weaknesses. In Little Mountain Jia, those with Ningmai 3rd stratum cultivation could be counted on the fingers. In the stage of Ningmai 3rd stratum, the lowest amount of Ling power in the body was 90 Jing. No one knew that the Ling power in Xia Shan's body had reached an astounding 180 Jing. There was a saying that if a person could get the Ling power in their body to contain more than 200 Jing, they could enter Jindan. This kind of saying was not reliable, but it showed just how strong Xia Shan was. He had almost reached the peak of Ningmai. The benefit of deep cultivation was that those killing moves that came at great cost were not significant to him. He rarely used killing moves. His comprehension of sword essence meant that he could easily face other enemies. However, Ma Fan had provoked his competitiveness today. The pure Ling power in his body were instantly channeled. The multicolored sword energies around his body brightened and vibrated. A light flashed through his eyes. His fingers came together and he pointed at the crowd of Xiuzha. 5-colored light rose in the sky above his head in layers like an aurora curtain. The sun in the sky lost color at this moment. As his fingers pointed into the air, the aurora in the sky suddenly broke, and countless broken sword essences howled as they turned to streaming 5-colored lights that shot down. Killing intent rose with the rain of light. It was a 5-colored rainstorm. However, no one had the energy to spare to watch it. The sound of air tearing made everyone's scalp prickle. What shocked the surrounding spectators was that Xia Shan's move had covered all the Xiuzha that had been pursuing them. Rainbow Mirage Light. This beautiful and ethereal name was a terrifying killing move. The Ling power it consumed was even more astonishing. 150 Jing of Ling power. It was more than the total Ling power that the great majority of Ningmai contained in their bodies. Ma Fan's expression changed and he did not hesitate in pulling out and retreating. He was not the only one. The other 2 Xiuzha who had charged forward also changed expressions, turning and then running back. This madman. They were extremely shocked. They knew that no one in the camp could compare to Xia Shan's cultivation, but they had never expected that he was this powerful. Ma Fan could not calm his heart. He had always assumed that while Xia Shan's cultivation was high, but they were equal in their strength. Due to the incorrect assumptions, he never placed much emphasis on his own cultivation. However, this scene today totally destroyed his worldview. They had escaped from this move because the sword essence in the sky had not locked onto them. Otherwise, it would have been as though they had sunk into quicksand and would be unable to take a single step. Xia Shan used this move to show them that Xiuzha of deep cultivation were terrifying. The Xiuzha that were covered by the rainbow rain were in tragic states. Other than sharpness, the 5-colored sword energies also had a strange corroding power. The Ling shield would only hold up to several blows before it would break. The xiuzhe that had been struck by the 5 colored streams of light were not able to even make a sound before their bodies rapidly changed into a puddle of soft 5-colored mud. Lei Peng and the other 9 that had ran away stopped at this time. They stared with their mouths wide open in shock as they looked in the direction of Nanxing village to see that patch of terrifying rainbow rain. Before they could sigh, they saw the 5 people flying over. Everyone's gaze as they looked at Xia Shan had changed. Xia Shan was not very smug. He only had 30 jing of Ling power left in his body. It would not be good if a battle occurred again. Move quickly. He did not hesitate as he passed by the others and threw out the 2 words. The others woke and hurriedly channeled their Ling power as they fled for their lives. Everyone knew that they had gone overboard. The killing move that consumed 150 jing of Ling power had startled all the xiuzhe in Nanxing village. In the blink of an eye, all the xiuzhe in Nanxing village flew into the sky. The sky was covered. Their expressions were strangely similar, extremely shocked. Even the fuming my 3rd stratum xiuzhe had paled. 150 jing of Ling power, that was more than all the Ling power in their bodies. Not one xiuzhe was standing in the area covered by the rainbow rain. Ling armor, talismans and flying swords covered the ground. At this time, no one dared to go and pick them up. The rainbow liquid that was flowing everywhere was like a beautiful yet fatal poison. He Xiang gaped as he looked at this scene, his mind blank. It was over. Having stayed at the camp, Mo did not know at all that the affair had become so large. He was busy settling in the first batch of xiuzhe that had arrived. The xiuzhe that were skilled in city building had been delivered to Sky Star Mountain with the quickest possible speed. Seeing the patch of wild mountains and a crude camp, many people had disappointed expressions. Mo did not attend to these people. He went straight to the xiuzhe who were skilled in city construction and spoke of his demands. Build a city. The 3 people looked at each other, their faces filled with disbelief. Did he assume that building a city was just putting a pile of rocks together and that was it? Is there a problem? Mo looked at the 3 with slight displeasure. The 3 people were not dumb. They knew that it was impossible for them to return now that they had arrived here. If they immediately offended the boss, they could not think about having a good future. How big of a city does boss want to construct? Asked one of them. Following the flow of this mountain range, it needs to include these peaks, able to defend against the attacks of a Jindan, able to. The 3 all collectively sank to inertness. The expense will be a bit high, another person probed. No problem, we have enough jingshi. Mo's attitude was like that of a nouveau riche. We need lots of manpower. Oh, 700 xiuzhe, is that enough? I can also make some puppets. Mo rubbed his chin and said to himself, it seems that I need to let Gongsun Shitty get some more people. These words made the 3 feel a malicious intent. Was this person a Xiu slave trader? However, the 3 had seen the combat abilities of this group on the way here. They did not believe Xiu slave traders would have such a strong troop. The 3 saw Mo was serious and started to also seriously focus on surveying the landscape. A few days later, 2nd Division had smoothly arrived back at camp. When Wei Qingbin came to the crude campsite, he was also very disappointed. However, before he could recover from the disappointment, the xiuzhe who had been hired were led in front of a person. Ji Wei looked down at the crowd of xiuzhe that had recoiled slightly and shouted, "Those that know forging, come out." A while later, they looked at each other, but no one dared to walk out. Ji Wei had expected the situation and followed up with, "Those that know forging can start work immediately. Let me tell you, this place pays wages on a unit basis. If you are late and the positions are taken, don't blame other people." Just as he finished, people instantly reacted, "I know. I know too." Ji Wei was not picky. He waved his hands, "All of you, come with me." 8 people followed Ji Wei, Wei Qingbin was among them. Because he had studied small illusory formations, he had put in quite a bit of effort on forging. He was not good at forging big pieces, but was very good at making small ones. They were taken to a mountain cave. The mountain cave clearly had been just carved out, and the person who dug it seemed to have no intentions of decoration. The walls were bare stone and mud. When they walked to the end of the mountain cave, they found that the area was extremely wide. However, it was all empty. There was nothing. Someone could not resist. Where's the fire pool for forging? The gold steel drills? Without those things, how can we forge? Ji Wei looked with dissatisfaction at the person and bellowed, "Shut up. You don't have any conduct." Seeing the person shrink back in fear, he snorted coldly and did not look at the person any longer. "Starting from today, you will be working here." The other people had expressions of bewilderment, but did not speak. Ji Wei was very satisfied. "As to the things you mentions, this place has none of them," Jia Wei said proudly. "Starting from today, you need to adjust to a new kind of forging method." At this time, the Xianxia beside Ji Wei started to distribute jade boxes to everyone. Wei Qingbin took the jade book with puzzlement. The jade box was very light in his hands. What it contained was very small. He looked cautiously at Ji Wei. Seeing the other did not seem to object to them opening the jade box, he carefully opened the jade box. His eyes suddenly widened, his mind blank. Golden Crow Fire. Chapter 248, The Problem of Settlement. When Lei Peng and the others returned, Sui Mo was discussing the construction plans of the city with the three people. Never having participated in building a city before, Sui Mo was extremely interested. Also, the newly built city was of extremely important in his plan. To the three people, a strong village that could defend against a Jindan was something they had never done before. They were extremely interested. As to the feasibility of the plans due to the high difficulty, that was boss' problem. They were only in charge of designing it. What is the use of this beacon tower? Suemo pointed at the plans and asked. It is primarily to give warning to allies. Other than that, it can contain 20 Xianxia. Its Ling shield can protect Xianxia. Xianxia standing on the top do not have to worry about the attacks of the enemy. But don't you think it is too small? It can hold 20 people, it is not small. Small, it's too small. At the very least, it needs to be able to hold 50 Xianxia. That way, it has offensive power. Also, we don't need that fire altar. We only have one city, we don't need to give anyone warnings. Without the fire altar, is it still a beacon tower? We can give it another name. What about Sword Pavilion, how do you guys feel about it? Suemo asked with interest. The three were wordless. Suemo clearly had not finished speaking his thoughts. Your plans are pretty good, but it is too conservative. Pure defense cannot stop the attacks of the enemy. Jindan recover Ling power faster than us. If he can't defeat us the first day, he'll come back the second day. If he continues to attack for a dozen days or a month, do you feel we can stop him? The three were speechless again. One person argued, if a Jindan attacks the city, there's no city in Little Mountain Jia that can stop him. There wasn't one before, but there will be one soon. Suemo looked at the other, and then added, if there isn't one when it's time, we will all die. The three instantly started to sweat, feeling hopelessness. Heavens, who had boss offended? Wait. Jindan. A person flashed across their minds, Clear Sky Old Forefather. There was only one Jindan Xianxia in Little Mountain Jia. Clear Sky Old Forefather, a person asked in a trembling voice. Suemo smiled and said, your guess is so accurate. The three's faces turned ashy. Suemo's smile was so evil in their eyes, more evil than a demon. They were extremely regretful. Before, their lives were poor, but at least they wouldn't be at risk for losing their little lives. Okay, everyone, Zhuemo clapped his hands, cheer up. I know you are the same as me, you don't want to die. So cheer up. Use your strongest imagination and give the most plausible plan. One person looked soulless, but he managed to keep his composure. Boss, you can't defend against a Jindan. Then what do we do? Zhuemo spread his hands and asked. This person bit out, if we can't defend, maybe we can try to kill him. You're crazy. The other two people yelled. Continue. Zhuemo was shocked inside, and gave a surprised expression. This person's face was white, but his eyes flashed with an insane light. Jindan might be strong, but they do have weaknesses. They are too proud, they believe too much in their own strength. They would not care about things that look very dangerous to us. We can make a trap using the city as bait. He may fall for it. It's not possible. He will see through our disguise. You cannot kill a Jindan. The other two muttered as though they were dreaming. Zhuemo scanned this person and asked, what's your name? Yuan Jiang, boss, the person answered respectfully. From today on, you are the leader of the three of you, Zhuemo then said to the other two, you two will be his assistants. If someone doesn't listen, you won't live if you rebel against a Jindan, but if you rebel against me, you won't have a life now. The two people's faces instantly whitened again, and fell silent. Make a new plan, Zhuemo said to Yuan Jiang. Yes, boss. Yuan Jiang said respectfully. He knew that if he was able to grasp this chance, his future prospects were limitless. Gongsun Cha listened to the people report. Xia Shan stood at the side with an ashamed expression. He knew that he had gone overboard this time. He had exposed himself too early in front of the public. It was not a good thing for them. Oh, so it's like that. Gongsun Cha raised his head, and gave a shy smile. He said warmly, no problem. Xia Shan's heart loosened slightly. However, Xia Shan's heart suddenly rose again. Since you guys caused this problem, then you need to wipe your own butts. Gongsun Cha then seemed to say to himself, oh, this is a pretty good chance, can't waste it. No one understood what Lil Miss meant in his words to himself. Right now, Clear Sky Sect is definitely searching for you. Even though you have covered your tracks very well, but they probably will not have to try so hard to find this place. Your present mission is to stop and disrupt their pursuit. Everyone instantly had an excited expression. Wasn't this another chance to fight? The corner of Gongsun Cha's mouth rose in an imperceptible curve. All of you will lead a platoon in this disruption mission. Ah! We also need to take those new people. The people who had just been so excited instantly withered. They finally reacted. What disruption mission? It was a babysitting mission. Thinking about taking along a large group of newbies that didn't know a thing, everyone, including Zhong Ru, had a grimace on their face. They were very willing to kill. But not one of them was willing to be a babysitter. What, you aren't willing? Gongsun Cha smiled, showing his teeth. Everyone's hearts suddenly froze. They simultaneously shook their heads. Willing, how can we not be willing? Leading a group of people, it will be very imposing, haha. Lei Peng's laughter was like sobbing. Very willing, very willing. Nian Lu hurried to agree, afraid if he wasn't careful, Lil Miss would fix onto him. Then it really would be getting a strip torn off his hide. Ma Fan saw Lil Miss' eyes float towards him and hurriedly jumped out. This subordinate is willing to be the first to fight. The other people instantly were upset. How come they hadn't been the first to declare themselves? Ma Fan's mind was getting better and better. He hadn't been the core for nothing. Instantly, everyone asked to fight. Gongsun Cha gave a shy and bashful smile, and said softly, you have to be careful." Hearing this, it was as though everyone had been pardoned, and they scattered, rushing to go pick people. Suemo suddenly felt he was much busier. All the Xianxia that had been brought over had at least one skill. He had to personally make arrangements for many people. However, before this, the first person he had to meet was the one who had planned all this, Bao Yi. "Boss." Bao Yi respectfully bowed. When he first saw Suemo, he was extremely shocked. From any angle, this boss looked like a youth that did not seem to have even entered his 20s. The more amazed he was, the less he dared to slight boss. To be able to gather together such a large group of people at such an age, his abilities were definitely not something that a little businessman like him could underestimate. After he took a tour around the camp, the amazement in his heart increased. Maybe this camp was extremely crude in other people's eyes, but in the eyes of someone as experienced as Bao Yi, there were too many places here that were not normal. That date seed ship was a rare Jingxia talisman. The female Xiao beside boss and the 3 metal guards enveloped in golden armor were unable to be quantified. The first mission he received was to organize the stores. He was very attentive to this mission. The stores could, to a certain degree, reflect the wealth of boss. The storeroom was a mountain cave. It was heavily guarded with 2 whole platoons of Xianxia. When he entered the deep cavern, and saw the mountainous pile of talismans, he was dumbstruck. In an instant, he felt all the blood in his body suddenly flood into his head. Heavens! It was the first time he had seen talismans piled up in heaps like they were trash. No one to care and repair them. Bao Yi's first thought was, wastrel, they were wastrels. After that, he started to organize through day and night. He organized and sorted the talismans according to type and grade. When Suemo entered the store and saw the reborn storeroom, he was very satisfied. "You must have worked very hard," Suemo said. "This is this subordinate's duty," Bao Yi hurriedly said. This guy really had abilities, Suemo thought inside. Even though he was full of interest towards business, but it was clear that he definitely would not have the time in the future. "You are going to be in charge of the store and be the quartermaster for the troop," Suemo reassured him. As the number of people increased, Suemo felt it was increasingly difficult to manage them all. The training and combat of the Xianxia in the camp belonged to Gongsun Shidi, but there was a lot of work in supplying resources. It had been a headache for him and Gongsun Shidi. As to Chun Shidi, that maniac could not be relied on. Bao Yi was overjoyed. "Thank you, boss. Quartermaster and in charge of the stores, that was a rich job." What he thought more of was the importance of this job. After this, he did not need to worry about his status in this group. "Work hard." Suemo encouraged and quickly left the storeroom. Bao Yi's job was very easy to arrange because no one other than him could do the job. However, Suemo felt it was very difficult to arrange the other people. They were skilled in a variety of areas, some of which were very obscure. Suemo still had no idea what to do with them. The only person he could ask for help was Pu Yao. This problem. Pu Yao thought, and then said, "Maybe you can borrow some methods from our Yao art houses." "What methods?" Suemo's mind became alert. In the bigger Yao art houses, they would take out a portion of resources and monies each year to support those Yao with unique ideas to study new Yao arts. Pu Yao said, "Of course, you cannot avoid the necessary examinations and assessments." Suemo's eyes lit up. That was a good idea. If he didn't know how to organize these people, it was better to let them work it out, and he could save effort. As to resources, it would be within the limits of their abilities. What Suemo needed the most at the moment was the least effort-consuming method. If it continued like this, he felt that definitely would have no time to cultivate. These days, it wasn't easy being the boss. Chapter 249, A New Plan. Xiang's face was black. The battle that had occurred at Nanxing village was nothing less than a slap to his face. Also, this incident had coincided with the most crucial moment in negotiations. Looking at the slightly mocking expressions on the faces of the group of leaders, he understood that he would not be able to negotiate for the price he wanted. He needed to prove Clear Sky Sect's dominance of Little Mountain Jie. He needed to tell everyone what would happen if they went against Clear Sky Sect and him. He Xiang's expression was twisted viciously like a wild beast wanting to bite someone. There was none of the slight smile that had been on his face during the day. All of you, just wait. Suemo read through Yuan Zhang's new plan. At first glance, he liked this plan, a plan that was completely different than before. Yuan Zhang was introducing the details. This is an extreme plan. All of the construction is about one goal, our imaginary enemy, the Clear Sky Old Forefather. When he spoke of Clear Sky Old Forefather, Yuan Zhang's voice was excited. To be able to maximize offensive and defensive capabilities, we rejected the plan to build a large city in this new plan. We will build a small city, a very small city, one that can only contain 10,000 people. Over here. He pointed at the highest peak. As the new city will be small, it will greatly reduce the area we have to defend, and gather our strength. Inside the new city, other than the basic necessities, all other constructions not related to combat have been abolished. The new city will be a big formation. This way, we can dramatically increase the defensive capabilities of the new city. We will hollow out the other 6 mountain peaks, and connect them to the new city underground. This way, we can form a gigantic 7-star formation. We've never planned such a large formation before, and do not know if it can stop a Jindan, but this is the limits of what we can do. Boss needs to find experts in formations to complete this plan. Suemo stared at the new blueprints without a word. Yuan Zhang was slightly uncertain. He didn't want to ruin his first job. What he didn't know was that his plan had given Suemo endless inspiration, especially the idea of digging out the 6 mountain peaks and forming a 7-star formation underground. That idea was too crazy, too creative. Suemo was thinking, if it was like that, the Sky Star Lake could also be included in the big formation. Using the mountains and lakes to set up a formation, Yuan Zhang's plans had opened a new window for Suemo. Suemo had never tried such a terrifying and large formation. However, he knew that if this big formation could be formed, its power would be greater than any formation he had ever set up before. The entire area around Sky Star Mountain would become an area controlled by the new city. Also, it would be so well disguised. Who could think that anyone would set up such an insane formation? There were many places inside the city that could be improved, especially in the area of formations. It was clear that the 3 people were less skilled in the area of formations compared to Suemo. Suemo suddenly thought of a problem. Power. Such a large formations, how many Jingshi would it take to activate? An even more insane idea jumped out of his head. Just at this time, he heard Yuan Zhang's worried words, "Boss, the building materials for this city isn't easy to find." Suemo silently remembered his thought and raised his head to smile smugly at Yuan Zhang. "We've already started to prepare the bricks." Yuan Zhang stilled, and did not look very happy. He said, "Boss, for the new city to achieve the predicted effect, these bricks can't be just anything. We need, follow me." Suemo did not waste words and turned to lead the front. When Yuan Zhang saw the mountains of blue gold stone bricks that had already been processed, he was dumbstruck. The other 2 people also gaped, looking dazedly at the glittering blue gold bricks. After a beat, Yuan Zhang managed to react and leap forward. Good. The quality is comparable to talismans. However, it is the first time I have seen such a hot presence. Yuan Zhang's expression was excited. Only now did he finally believe that boss really wanted to build a city. These bricks have been processed with golden crow fire. The quality isn't bad. A rock in Suemo's heart landed. It looked like these bricks would satisfy Yuan Zhang's demands. Great! Yuan Zhang was thrilled. Now that the problem of the bricks has been resolved, the other problems are easy. Sui Mo did not speak. In his view, it was the exact opposite. The other problems were even harder. It really was a vast undertaking. Wei Qingbin's recent days were not very good. Rationally, absorbing such a desired and fine fire seed as golden crow fire should make a person happy. Even though there was none of the Ling grains that had been predicted, but everyone had received a black meditation mat. When Master Sun Bao had showed them how to use it, these black meditation mats had become everyone's most treasured possession. Many people were regretting that they hadn't taken enough Jingxia with them. No one had any objections about their wages turning from the Ling grains to Jingxia. What saddened him was the work that had followed. When he saw the bluestone bricks that were multiple times larger than he was, he instantly did not know what to do. After that, it had taken him great effort before managing to process one of them. Then he found that other people had finished 3 pieces. Therefore, his wages were 1/3 of other people's income. Master Ji Wei suddenly gathered people together. Who knows how to make small parts? The dejected Wei Qingbin instantly jumped out, his eyes bright. I know. Other than him, a few other people had also stood up. Wei Qingbin glanced and laughed inside. All of them were people that had not performed well in the recent days. Master Ji Wei did not say anything and gave them each a jade scroll. Make whatever you can from what is in there. All the materials are over there. It's the same, pay by unit. Finishing, Master Ji Wei did not waste words and left. In the time he had spent here, Wei Qingbin had gradually gotten used to the busy atmosphere in this place. There were no idle people to be seen here. All the people, including boss, seemed extremely busy. The cave was even more so. Because wages were calculated according to quantity, everyone was furiously working as the meditation mat meant Jingxia became a lifesaver. Everyone hoped to get more Jingxia. Only Xiaoxia that had experienced the lack of Ling energy and faced the possibility that their cultivation could collapse at any time would work so crazily. He started to read the jade scroll in his hands and made a sound of surprise. Everything inside the jade scroll were strange metal constructs. There seemed like talismans but were not talismans. There were very detailed descriptions. Wei Qingbin recognized them. These were for a type of puppet. He silently praised the wisdom of the person who had this idea. The puppet had been deconstructed to many little constructs. This person clearly was going after assembly. Wei Qingbin reacted. The number of Xiaoxia here was limited, and there were no Xiao slaves. Puppets were a pretty good substitute. However, what puzzled him was that puppets needed Xiaoxia to direct them. With so many puppets, how many Xiaoxia would be needed to direct them? This thought turned in his head once before he threw it out. That wasn't something he should care about. He started to work. A short while later, he made his first finished product. He was greatly encouraged, and worked hard. He gradually found that the smaller and more exquisite the item, the easier it was for him to make it. Master Ji Wei quickly noticed his specialty and was somewhat shocked before giving him a job with a batch of small items. His wages quickly grew with astonishing speed. The Xiaoxia around him stared jealously. These days were actually not bad, Wei Qingbin occasionally thought. Still haven't found them. He Xiang bellowed, you group of garbage. How many days has it been since they escaped? You still haven't found them. This group is very cunning. They had scattered and escaped, which wasted a lot of our time. His subordinate defended. Don't find excuses. He Xiang controlled his anger, his tone dark, what I want are results. As long as old forefathers' order has not come down, I am the chief elder. Before this, I can execute any of you. The subordinates paled. They knew that he Xiang was not wrong. I'll give you 3 more days. If you cannot find them in 3 days, you can take your heads to see me. Xiang's words seemed to come from the depths of hell, cold and terrifying. The subordinates knew that defending themselves was ineffective at this time. Everyone dejectedly bowed and quickly left. The chief elder would do what he said. The old forefather would not interfere. There were too many people waiting to enter to the outer hall, too many people that could replace them. When everyone had left, Xiang collapsed on the chair as though he had been robbed of all energy. His eyes were as dull as those of a dead fish. 3 days, that was the deadline the old forefather gave. If there were no further developments in 3 days, he wasn't going to live any longer. Originally, he had wanted to conceal this matter, and had not expected someone to bring it to old forefather. The result could be imagined. If he did not display enough ability, he knew very well the outcome waiting for him. Ma Fan chewed a piece of grass in his mouth, looking in boredom at the sky above his head. He muttered, "Troublesome, it really is troublesome." The platoon leader tightly followed behind his butt, completely disregarding Ma Fan's grouching. He was overjoyed at having gotten picked by Ma Fan. He was one of the original ones and very clear as to Ma Fan's previous position and effect within the troop. Previously, many people had expected Ma Fan would have been the first division leader. This platoon leader knew one thing. If he followed behind Ma Fan, he would learn many things. The Xianxia under his command did not understand why the platoon leader was so respectful towards this Xianxia that had been inattentive all this time. In their eyes, the biggest reason Ma Fan did not fit in with the troop was that indifference he exuded. Idle, lazy, wasn't those things that the platoon leader extremely disliked. They aren't far from us. A piece of grass held between his lips, Ma Fan's words were slightly muddled. The platoon leader listened very carefully. On the way here, he was full of admiration towards Ma Fan's judgment. Ma Fan raised his eyelids, looked into the distance, and continued, "Let everyone recover their Ling power. They will probably encounter us in 6 hours." The platoon leader's expression tensed. The slight wind in the air suddenly seemed slightly murderous. Chapter 250, Pu Yao's insane suggestions. Mo stretched and released a long breath, his entire body sore. However, when he looked at the jade scroll in front of him, he couldn't help but give a proud smile. He had completely improved the new plan. All the formations in the plans were redone. Formation defense style, he, have a taste of the true formations defense style. Mo was very satisfied and proud of the finished plan. In the process of improving them, he had benefited. It had been very valuable. There were many questions he had never thought of before. There were many problems when building a city, and it was far more complex than formations. He tried to put different kinds of formations into every corner of the plans. Unlike Yuan Jiang and the others, Mo would use formations in any place possible if he did not have to use manpower. The enormous construction would become a shockingly complex formation group, a gigantic formation belt composed of more than 400 formations of various sizes. Mo anticipated what expression Yuan Jiang would have when he saw this completely transformed plan. Pu Yao suddenly came out to remind him, "This is a good chance." Mo stilled and asked, "What's a good chance?" Gong Sun Cha had become at leisure recently and spent every day playing war chess with Pu Yao. Usually, as long as he was facing off Gong Sun Cha, Pu Yao would be much calmer. Many times, Mo could not help but feel that Pu Yao really was like a child. Of course, this kind of comparison was something a Sky Yao could not tolerate. Mo had smartly shut his mouth. "Your body is barely acceptable, but you have been lacking in your cultivation recently. The potential of this body has not been completely excavated," Pu Yao said, his voice heavy. "Wastefulness is shameful." Mo looked in shock at Pu Yao. That tone, why did it sound so similar to his own? Wrong feeling, wrong feeling. Mo shook his head and threw the feeling aside. He said in helplessness, "There's no other way." You can see it. I'm just one person. I can't be split in two. So what is in front of you is a chance. Right now, you have reached the peak of mountain physique. If you take another step, you will give birth to the moon soul, and reach the level of Mo captain. Light flashed through Pu Yao's bloody pupil. The level of Mo captain. Equivalent to your Xiaoxia's Ningmai. Sui Mo was greatly disappointed. He was already Ningmai. After the breakthrough to create a moon soul, that would just be equivalent to a Ningmai. It was not that attractive to him. Pu Yao seemed to see what Sui Mo was thinking and smiled coldly. Don't feel as though it is unprofitable. Your physique has a name, it is called jade metal head. Metal skin, jade bones. In low-level Mo physiques, it is among the top. That guy really put a lot of effort into it. Your luck isn't bad, you made it through. Once you have a moon soul, you can absorb the power of the moon, and grow quickly. Also, there is an extra benefit to you that others don't have. What benefit? Sui Mo hurriedly asked. Your spiritual cultivation is star spiritual cultivation. If you can cultivate to moon soul, you can absorb the powers of the stars and moon. If you are lucky, you may cultivate the stars and moon wheel. What is the stars and moon wheel? Just like you Xiaoxia like using grades to divide it good and bad, high and low, Yaomua have similar divisions. Mo cultivate their bodies. There are many considerations. Other than the Mo skills learned during life, all kinds of Mo physiques are crucial, and there are naturally differences in quality. Mo live under military law. They like using military rankings to divide everything. Soldier, captain, colonel, brigadier general, marshal, king. That group of people are simple-minded. Almost everything is divided like this, it's easy to remember. Pu Yao's tone was filled with disdain and scorn towards the intelligence of Mo. Then jade metal head is what level? 5th in captain level. Pu Yao spread out 5 fingers and waved them. Seeing the disappointment on Sui Mo's face, he sneered, alright, don't act as though you didn't get anything. Mo physique isn't so easy to achieve. Any physique in the top 5 of all levels are what others dream about. However, you have to be careful, Mo physique is good, but if you encounter those people that refine corpses, you have to be careful. Mo physique is something they dream about too. Ha ha. Sui Mo's heart tightened as he listened. Then stars and moon wheel. It's also a Mo physique. It is also a Mo physique, but it is even more rare. 12th in colonel level, Pu Yao recalled, if I didn't remember it wrong. Sui Mo listened and was even more confused. Is there any practical benefits? Pu Yao stilled. What is called practical benefits? Like can I defend against other people's flying swords, like my strength is 10 times what it was, like, Pu Yao rolled his eyes, if someone like you can deal with flying swords with just your body, you Xiaoxia would have been destroyed by us Yaomua a long time ago. Sui Mo was embarrassed. He found it was correct when he thought about it. If Mo could handle strikes from a flying sword with only their body, then Xiaoxia of the same level would not be a match for them. Flying swords could deal the greatest damage of all the talismans, and it was the sharpest. If even the flying sword could not wound the other, then other talismans really could not do a thing against the Yaomua. The flying swords of the Xiaoxia are still very powerful, Pu Yao sighed. You have never seen truly powerful Xiaoxia. With their actions, they can destroy the earth and sky. They can even easily tear apart space, and nothing can stop them. Sui Mo was not interested in those things that were too far away from him, and diverged back to the topic. Those old people has nothing to do with us. This jade metal head is 5th in captain level, it should have some unique attributes. Unique attributes? Pu Yao nodded. Of course. The biggest attribute of the jade metal head is that it is suitable for all Mo skills. Just this? Sui Mo asked in response. Yes, you don't think this is enough? Pu Yao looked at Sui Mo like he was looking at a weirdo. Sui Mo was slightly embarrassed by Pu Yao's stare. But I don't know Mo skills. If you don't want to be killed at any moment, don't cultivate Mo skills in the short term. Pu Yao said solemnly, when you start to cultivate Mo skill, the presence will radiate out. You will only die terribly. Sui Mo was dumbstruck. After all this time, every word was a waste. Then why should I cultivate my body? I should just cultivate the sword. If not that, then even the consciousness works. Little thousand-leaf hands is stronger than that. In a reversal of his usual attitude, Pu Yao shook his head. If you do not have this jade metal head, I won't urge you, but with such a wonderful Mo physique, if you do not cultivate it, it really is a waste. You cannot practice Mo skills at the moment, but that is fine. The jade metal head itself contains extremely deep potential. If you can dig out all the potential, when you cultivate Mo skills in the future, half of the work is already done, and you do not have to worry about the Mo energy slipping out. Sui Mo waved his hand and said unconcernedly, you say these pleasing things, but if we don't get over this obstacle, any Mo skill cultivation is useless. Pu Yao was speechless. He thought and then nodded, you are also right. Maybe we can alter it. Alter? Sui Mo was slightly bewildered. What was with Pu Yao today? Why was he so chatty? We shall do an analysis of what moves you have available. Pu Yao sat down. Let's not include sword scriptures, your talent with the sword really is not good, and your sword essence level is too low, not even at heart-turn sword essence. It isn't even enough to scratch an itch for a Jindan. Little thousand-leaf hands, is pretty powerful, but your consciousness is not strong enough to threaten a Jindan. The sky wave fist scripture, is not enough against a Jindan. The only thing that can be effective is your big formation. The grade of the Yin fire beads are too low to be of significance. Those sonic lightning walnuts might give him some trouble if they are forged properly. When he finished, Pu Yao spread his hands. See, no matter what you cultivate, it's useless. Sui Mo was extremely impacted and speechless. However, some areas have potential. Pu Yao knew very well how to use the stick and the carrot. Sui Mo became alert at those words. Tell me. It's a good idea to use, Yang Fiend Hard Lightning, to forge sonic lightning walnuts. You may want to borrow from the methods of the Yin fire beads, Pu Yao reminded. Sui Mo slapped his forehead and said with joy, right, why didn't I think of that? In the Yin fire bead chapter, there hadn't been just one powerful way to make Yin fire beads. Wouldn't their effects be better than what he thought of himself? He wanted to immediately read the Yin fire bead chapter. The clear sky old forefather was like a sharp sword hanging above his head. He could not sleep well. He had always lacked moves that could threaten his enemies. Now that he had found one, how could he not rejoice? Other than the sonic lightning walnuts, if your physique could improve greatly in the short term, sky glass wave, may also give him some trouble. Sui Mo still again. When he thought closely, he instantly found it feasible. If his body cultivation could make another step forward, if the number of revolutions his Ling power took could increase, the power of sky glass wave would also increase. He had used sky glass wave to break through the space shield of a 5th grade Ling beast. Even though the bloody horned serpent was just a semi-5th grade Ling beast, but if he could increase, he might be able to threaten the clear sky old forefather. The more he thought, the more excited Sui Mo was. He suddenly found that he could attack. It was like seeing a ray of light in the darkness. Even though it was just a thread, but it still gave him hope. He asked impatiently, what is the opportunity you said? City construction. Pu Yao blinked his bloody pupil. City construction. Sui Mo stilled again, what does this have to do with city construction? The corner of Pu Yao's mouth carelessly rose, his bloody pupil narrowed slightly, and his peerlessly handsome face became even harder to decipher. He looked like a cunning hunter that threw out the bait he had already prepared. With a light laugh, he said, "Haven't you ever thought of building the city by yourself?" "Build the city by myself?" Suemo was dumbstruck where he stood. "Yes, build the city by yourself." Pu Yao raised his long and white finger that contrasted with the bright red fingernail. He chuckled, "Such a meaningful affair. A city that belongs completely to you. Making the foundation by yourself, making the city by yourself, making the formations by yourself." Suemo turned to stone. "See, it won't just exercise your body, it can also exercise your consciousness and your Ling power. Where else can you find such a good chance? A little city that can hold 10,000 people, it really is too small. At the beginning, I had assumed you were building a little city that could hold 100,000 people at the very least. That way, you will be exercised even more. Shall we expand the city? Don't you want to kill that Jindan? Your little life is the most important. The harder you work, the more powerful you will be. If you sweat more now, you will spill less blood later." Hearing Pu Yao nag into his ears, Suemo received a great fright. His eyes rolling back, he fainted. Chapter 251, Crazy Suemo. Even a person as unconcerned with worldly affairs as Chun Yucheng had heard the news. Is there really nothing wrong with Xixiang? Looking at a half-naked Suemo that appeared like a maniac, he asked with worry and uncertainty. Gong Sun Cha shook his head and said, "I don't know. I heard that he's going to build the city by himself." Chun Yucheng carefully asked. He looked with slight sympathy at Suemo. Xixiang was normally a fanatic, but had the pressure recently been too much, and caused him to become abnormal? Yes, Gong Sun Cha also responded carefully in a small voice as well. "I even asked Xixiang a few days ago if we should sweep some more Xiuzha over. Xixiang said he was going to build the city by himself. So the news is true." Chun Yucheng gave a long sigh, and looked again. He sighed, as expected. "I just knew that Xixiang isn't the average person." He looked in sympathy at Suemo, then turned and left with his hands behind his back. "Xixiang isn't normal, as expected." Gong Sun Cha gave the same exclamation as before, also turning and leaving. Yuan Zhang's heart trembled as he forced himself to say, "Boss, this foundation, it needs to be dug deeper to work." Suemo turned around his face, his eyes gleaming like that of a wolf. Yuan Zhang's face paled. Luckily, Suemo only glanced at him before turning back to furiously start to dig the foundations. He jumped into the pit, his hands dancing as the soil flew. The earth hole quickly increased in depth and size with a speed visible to the naked eye. Yuan Zhang furiously swallowed from the side, his face filled with fear. To be in the position of supervisor like this, he was to be pitied. Every time he saw Boss' twisted features, it was as though there was an ancient wasteland beast in front of him that could open its jaws and swallow him at any moment. He would be so frightened by Boss' gleaming gaze to the point of forgetting to breathe whenever he pointed out areas where Boss had not met the specifications. This world was crazy. The frightened Yuan Zhang felt every day was full of darkness, so black that there was no light. He could not understand what sickness Boss had that he would suddenly want to construct a city by himself. Yes, this city was really quite small. A new city that could hold 10,000 people, the smallest of small cities, but it was still a city. As grown-up as he was, oh, please forgive him for incoherence, it was slightly dubious for Yuan Zhang, who was over 80 years old, to say this. However, in his 80 years of life, he had never seen, nor heard of a Xiuzha who built a city by themselves. What made him feel helpless was that Boss was serious. As a supervisor, Yuan Zhang thought that Boss was a very exceptional constructor. Look at that blinding speed. If someone had such a good worker under them, any supervisor would laugh. However, if the situation was changed and there was only this one good worker, then they would cry. With boss present speed, Yuan Jiang felt hopelessness about building the city. What made him feel the greatest lack of hope was that the other was his boss. Xuemo felt every piece of muscle in his body was trembling uncontrollably. He seemed to have lost control over his body. He opened his mouth like a fish that was thrown onto land, his body motionless. This body cultivation was really through. Xuemo felt even the insides of his head were trembling. All of his power, no matter if it was physical power, Ling power or spiritual power, had been completely consumed in this extreme labor. In the plans for the city, the foundation was to be 20 zhang deep. Xuemo had to use his bare hands to dig out the entire foundation. Pu Yao was very devious. Xuemo weakly cursed Pu Yao inside. After resting for a moment, the lingdan he had shoved into his mouth earlier started to release their medicinal power. The black processing meditation mat under his body continuously guided Ling energy into Xuemo's body. At this moment, Xuemo's body was like a parched desert that was greedily sucking in any drop of medicinal and Ling power. After a while, Xuemo recovered some energy and struggled up. The sun above his head was slightly blinding. He turned to glance at the half-completed ditch. Taking in a deep breath, he jumped back into the ditch. The abnormal state of boss had long ago passed through the entire camp. Everyone had been discussing it in secret. They couldn't understand what boss intended to do. Xuemo mechanically waved his arms. His speed was very fast. His consciousness was continuously released and reflected every detail of the dirt around him. Pu Yao had been right. If he could build up this city by himself, his strength definitely could break through to a whole new level. But this was such a perverse plan. Xuemo tightly pressed together his dry lips, pushed his head down and dug crazily. He started to learn how to use his consciousness to inspect the surrounding dirt, how to use the structure already present in the soil to save energy. He started to understand how to frugally use Ling power. Before this, he had never thought there would be a day where he would use Ling power so stingily. He started to understand how to move his hands as he absorbed earth energy at the same time. 3 days later, a square-shaped hole 20 zhang deep appeared on Sky Star Peak. Xuemo looked like a mud person. Only his eyes were revealed. After laughing soundlessly, he sat down and crossed his legs. Yuan Jiang was at the side, gaping as he looked at the 20 zhang deep foundation, a foundation that had completely met the specifications. It was not just him that was gaping. The entire camp was shocked. Those Xianxia that had had slightly mocking attitudes were so shocked they could not speak when they saw this 20 zhang deep ditch. Who could believe this was something a Xianxia had dug with his bare hands? However, they had seen the entire process with their own eyes. Those people that had watched in order to laugh at the joke now only felt admiration. In the sea of consciousness, Pu Yao stared at the gravestone and said, "I now understand why you chose him. You," he paused after each word, "are similarly stubborn." The gravestone was still silent, the black clouds slowly moving around it. Gong Sun Cha looked thoughtfully at the meditating Xuemo and turned back to return to the camp. He ordered the Xianxia in a low voice, "Tell Ma Fan and the others to distract some more. They need to slow them down. We need more time." "Yes." This Xianxia took out a paper crane, wrote down a secret code on it, and lightly channeled Ling power. The paper crane flapped into the sky and instantly disappeared. Before Ma Fan and the others left, they had left behind their impressions. These paper cranes could follow the impressions and find Ma Fan and the others. Little Mountain Jia was not large. It was convenient to use paper cranes. "What about us?" Another Xianxia couldn't help but ask. Other than Ma Fan and the others had each taken a platoon with them, there were still many battle Xianxia at the camp. The figure of Xixiang completely covered in mud appeared in Gong Sun Cha's mind. His steps slightly paused before recovering. Naturally, we can't be idle as well. Ma Fan scanned the battlefield. More than a dozen corpses laid askew on the grass. Large holes could be seen everywhere. The plains that appeared to extend without end had been torn to pieces. The Ling power was lingering in the air. It almost was possible to smell the viciousness of the battle moments ago. The enemy had all been destroyed, but one of their own had also died. The platoon leader's expression was slightly sorrowful. This was the first time that a fatality had occurred under his command. The remaining Xianxia were silently cleaning up the battlefield and gathering the spoils. The victory had turned melancholic due to one of their own dying. Ma Fan looked at his slightly dejected fellows and was somewhat shocked but also proud. In any group that he had stayed in before, the morale would have never dropped after a victorious battle due to one of their own dying. Maybe, these were true fellows. Ma Fan thought idly. Just at this time, he raised his head. A paper crane flew through the sky. He held out a hand, and the paper crane flew in. Unfolding it and reading, he muttered, "Trouble." He then handed the paper crane to the platoon leader behind him. "What does head mean?" The face of the platoon leader was filled with puzzlement. There was no explicit orders on the paper crane, just telling them to try their best to delay the enemy. Ma Fan did not reply.